And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecution is not going to get that man today. No, because I'm going to get him.
Ladies and gentlemen, to a very special Thursday edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. This is a live broadcast. It is Thursday, January 10th, 2013. I'm Doug Hagmann. With me is my co-host, my son, Joe Hagmann, of course. Together, we are the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. And for the next 3 hours, you're about to experience an incredible program. Folks, we've got a very, very special guest on with us tonight. His name is Nathan Leal. He is the head of a website called watchmanscry.com. That's watchmanscry.com. But before we bring him on, Joe, how are you, by the way?
Doing great. We had a busy day, and I'm really looking forward to tonight's show and hearing what Nathan has to say about the inauguration and a whole lot more that you guys are going to be happy to hear about. And so without further ado, we're going to bring on Mr. Leal.
Before we introduce Nathan Knight, I just want to say this, ladies and gentlemen, one of the things that both Joe and I have been doing is we've been looking through current events through the prism of biblical and scriptural prophecy. But the other aspect of this, I shouldn't even say the other, because it kind of all melds together, is the aspect of the unseen, the shadowy world, the globalist agenda. Well, who are the globalists? And, who are these people who are supposedly behind the curtain pulling the strings? And where do they come from? And what's conspiracy? What's fact? What are we talking about here? And even in addition to that, where do they fit? Where do all these pieces fit in together? And even you might ask, why should I even care? Especially, why should I care if it's not really affecting me? But it is. And the more research Joe and I do, and Joe especially, and me as well, I mean, we both of us, we're like hard at work doing research, and I got to tell you, things that we don't see, and we think when people talk about it, we think like, man, it's almost like they've got two heads when you look at them. Or when we talk, it's like people look at us like we've got two heads, like we're aliens or something. But this stuff that's going on is real. And one of the things we found that I have to say is true is that there is an agenda, a plan of a shadowy cabal of people. They are. They're out there. They're generational. I mean, in terms of they've been out there for a long time, in existence for a long time, in terms of the generations of the families. And there's this unseen hand, if you will. It's difficult sometimes to explain, but it's relevant. And that's so. We had asked through our research, we had found Nathan Leal's website called The Watchman's Cry. And by the way, Karen in Rome, Italy, among others, I just want to say hello to Karen in Rome, Italy, because Karen had asked us to bring Nathan on, as others have, but a special hello to Karen in Rome, because, the international aspect of our audience, where it's just after 2 o'clock in the morning there. So that's pretty interesting that Karen would be up at this hour listening specifically to this broadcast. I want to say thank you very much. By the way, in case you didn't catch it, folks, if you go to HomelandSecurityUS.com, that's our home base, HomelandSecurityUS.com. Nathan Leal's website is linked from our website. You can go to the upcoming scheduled guests and his website. Information there. Just click on the link. It'll take you right to watchmanscry.com. But with that, folks, welcome. I want to welcome Nathan Leal. Nathan, are you there?
I am here, Mr. Doug and Joe. Thanks for having me on and inviting me.
It's our pleasure. Let me tell you. It's good to hear you, and you're
listening to the alerts you put out, the podcasts you put out. I've heard more intensity. I can feel things speeding up here. I can hear it in your messages that you're putting out from the inauguration to back when the election happened. How you felt? How was it possible that this guy Obama got reelected? And tonight we're going to be covering a vast array of different issues from the inauguration to different spiritual issues. And I'll just leave it to you, Nathan, to start where you would like to.
Before we just toss it to Nathan, I just want to say that when we talk about the Illuminati, it's something that 5 years ago, if you would have said that to me, hey, look, we need to talk about this Illuminati, this entity, I would have laughed and said, come on, that's just a bunch of hooey and hogwash. And the stuff that Angels and Demons, and was that the movie back then, Angels and Demons? I don't know. That was popular. It was this stuff of folklore. But I have to tell you, this stuff is real, and looking at it from different aspects, and it's real. So now, but of course, I don't need to tell Nathan that. But one of the things that Nathan Leal and I talked about was the inauguration. And that's kind of where we started. And I'd ask, let's start there about the importance of the inauguration. But let's also leave time, if we can, to get into, if we have the time, to get into a little bit about the Olympics, if that's possible, the significance of some of the Olympic ceremonies, if that's possible, and if we have time for that. But most importantly, the inauguration of Barack Hussein Obama, that's coming up on the 20th of January 2013. So with that, Mr. Leal, we're going to turn you loose. What's the significance of January 20th, 2013, Barack Hussein Obama, the inauguration?
2.0.
Yeah, what's up with this?
Okay. A good question, and I was speaking to Joe off the air, and Joe said, if possible, can I just give a brief foundational outline of who I am? So I just want to, for the listeners who have not heard about my ministry, I am first and foremost a minister of the gospel. That's what I do. I was called to the ministry a long time ago, over 30 years ago. I used to belong to the Assemblies of God. I was trained in their colleges. I went through all of the loopholes and pigeonholing to learn the ways of the established church. So I have been trained their way, but I am no longer a part of the Assemblies of God because there are some areas where I don't agree with as far as some of the tenets of faith, the most important one being the pre-tribulation rapture. And I want to say, gentlemen, that in these last days, God is teaching his people, if we allow him to, and if we spend time with him, if we discipline ourselves to praying, and if we learn the disciplines that the Bible tells us and challenges with. Paul tells us to, there's a whole laundry list of what it takes to be a disciple of God, to be a Christian. So that is my endeavor. Those are the things I'm after. And the reason it's very important for us to have the correct foundation is because there's a lot of deception out there. And a lot of people are listening to the wrong voices, the wrong advice, the wrong counsel, the wrong information. There's a lot of information out there. There's a lot of chatter that is going in all sorts of directions. But it says in Psalms chapter 1, blessed is the man that does not sit at the counsel of the ungodly. So we have to have our counsel from God, and the counsel of God comes from the Bible. So I want to establish that. Everything that I'm going to share tonight can be backed up with the Scriptures. And the reason that that's very important is because if any individuals that are listening may find themselves alone or they're shut-ins, they live in the middle of nowhere, and they don't have anyone to talk to, we still have our Bibles. And God can teach us what we need to learn if we seek him diligently and earnestly. So I wanted to say that right off the bat. Now, to get to the discussion of Obama and what's coming, I also want to say this. It's very, very important. And by the way, side note, Mr. Joe and Doug, if I may, I just want to say this for all the listeners. I would hope and I would wish that the program that we're doing tonight would be one of the biggest programs you have ever done in Hagmann and Hagmann history, because this message needs to be heard by everyone that calls themselves a Christian, especially those who are awake, especially those who want to be those that endure, those that are a part of the remnant, those that want to survive this thing and endure this thing and have the correct perspective of this thing. So I want to challenge you, listener. When this program is finished and you can download it, share it with everyone that you know, your pastors, your friends, everybody. The word needs to get out on what is coming, because we are facing something so gargantuan, and if the tide of the people of God goes in the wrong direction, it's going to be a colossal failure. We're going to see a lot more casualties. We're going to see a lot more people who fell, who will die. This thing is so important. We're facing the days that are similar to Valley Forge, to fighting the Redcoats, to the beginning revolution that began this nation. And the direction that we go as a nation needs to be guided by the correct counsel, because there's a lot of well-meaning people out there that are giving the wrong counsel. So first and foremost, we need to have the right counsel, and that's why this program is going to be important, because I am going to lay the entire picture so that we can have the correct perspective on what's going on right now. Now, speaking of perspective.
Wait, Nathan, if I can interrupt for just for a second, if I can call you Nathan, if that's all right.
Yes.
And listeners, what I'd recommend, because this information is so important. By the way, folks, we are not going to be taking phone calls for Nathan. If you would like, you can email me directly. Just go to HomelandSecurityUS.com, click on my name, and then the subject line, just put in the word question. And if I get it in time, that is, if it's not rerouted through some agency, I will pose it to Mr. Leal. The second thing is, I would ask everyone, because of the subject matter, if you're not driving when you're listening to this, or if you're not whatever, just have a note, pen and paper handy, because there's a lot of information that Mr. Leal is going to cover, and I think it's important for you to take notes. And as Mr. Leal said, and indeed, you've got our permission to burn this to an MP3 or CD or whatever you want to call it, and pass out the information. But that said, go on, Mr. Leal. That'll be the last time I interrupt and take away from your time. So let's rock and roll.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that, because I was actually going to say the same thing. Take a lot of notes, folks. So the correct perspective. It is so important that we are looking at today's events through the correct lens. And I know that at times that's a very hard discipline. It's a very hard task, because human nature wants someone to blame. Human nature wants to have a face of someone to be mad at. So this is where one of the challenges is. Also, the other question that needs to be asked, while we're looking at the Second Amendment being in jeopardy right now, and a lot of people are angry and mad and confused, and we're going to cover that, by the way, toward the end of this program. I'm going to cover a lot of questions that people are thinking about, because I've been talking to a lot of people about this. But the number one question that needs to be asked as we are looking at today's current events is this: what time is it? That's the real question. And in our earthly existence, we don't think that way. We think in a limited perspective. The physical only wants to look at the physical, but the spiritual dimension does exist. Now, another question that needs to be asked is, when are we? What I mean by that is the assessment, diagnosis of America. When we look around and we see the landscape of America, we have an appraisal. It's easy to see that there is a problem right now in the present world economy and American economy. Now, sadly, most people don't see it, Most likely they don't want to see it, but nevertheless, America right now, let me use this word, gentlemen, that most people shy away from, and I notice it scares people when you say it, but this is the truth. Right now, America is in a depression. There is no recovery. There will not be a recovery. The true statistics of unemployment, and I'm sure you've had your programs, and most of your listeners are smart. You know the real stats. We see the real unemployment. We know that it's way off the charts. We know that the foreclosures are off the charts, historical. We see that we are looking at a historical numbers as far as Americans on food stamps. We're approaching 50 million. Poverty has now reached almost half of the households in America. The middle class of America is vaporizing. College graduates cannot find work. We can go on, but folks, this is not a recovery. In spite of what the talking heads say on mainstream news, and in spite of what might be said and stated from the presidential pulpit, there is no recovery. We are not in a recovery, and we are not in a recession. It is a depression. So let's admit that, first of all. Now, why are the stats wrong? Why does the mainstream media not tell us the true stats? Why do they tell us a different story? Well, first of all, the stats are telling the real story, so what that means is somebody is lying. And it's not, the stats are not lying. All we have to do is drive down the streets of most cities in America, and we can see what the true statistics are. Now, why is this happening, though? And getting back to my original question, where are we? When are we in the timeline? And what time is it? Is America in a depression right now because of an accounting error? Is it a human's fault? Is it Tim Geithner's fault? Is it the Democrats' fault, the Republicans? Is it bad policy? And you see, gentlemen, most individuals, God bless them, on Blog Talk Radio right now in the alternative media, they want to blame a human. They want to blame a face. They want to blame a name, a party, a political leaning, an idealistic thought. But what I just mentioned is the overgrowth of foliage. Those statistics that I just mentioned, that's foliage. But what is the root problem beyond what is visible? You see, that's where we have to be looking at. In other words, beyond the physical lens. And when we do that, and when we're willing to do that, then we start getting some results that are very disturbing and results that we really do not want to entertain. For example, many well-meaning patriots still want to say the song, God Bless America, and over 90% of the evangelical churches want to sing the song, God Bless America, and act like everything's okay. But, folks, listeners, let's get down to the root truth. A blessed nation is bountiful, and a blessed nation lends to others. A blessed nation has extra, and it feeds the world. But right now, America is not doing that. America is in trouble. And if this was just limited to evil men pulling levers, then we could have fun deciding who to blame. But it is not just Uncle Sam's secretary or a clerical error that has placed us in this position. Because if we were limited to just blaming man, then there's another variable in the equation that actually is outside of that argument, and that is this. America is also right now in the historic droughts. Now, why is that happening? Right now, the statistics are saying that the amount of coverage for the drought that's happening is rivaling the Dust Bowl. Also, we're seeing earth changes happening. We're having earthquakes occurring more and more. And some could say, well, Nathan, it's hard doing that. But beyond that, well, why is the sun acting erratic? Why is the solar system warming up? You see, beyond the scope of blaming the Democrats or the leader in the House, Mr. Boehner, beyond that, we have to ask the question that needs to be addressed. Now, why do we need to do that? Because that's where the truth is going to be found. So, again, here's the question. What time is it? When are we in the historic clock? Where are we in the prophetic timeline? Now, these are the questions, ladies and gentlemen, that we need to be asking, and this is where we are, and this is what we need to be talking about. So, let me just say this. It needs, and on my website, in the programs that I put out, in the podcasts that I put out, for over 5 years, I have been screaming from the wall that we're in a very late hour. I've been screaming from the wall that we need to know what time it is. So, attention, listening audience, if you're taking notes, please write this down. Because here's another part of the summary, and this is the part that people do not want to accept. 90% of the people in churches will not accept this, and for sure the mainstream media will not touch this. But here, number one is the truth, and it is this. Write this down. America right now is experiencing God's judgment. Now, I'll give you a chance to write that down. And now that I said it, let's talk about it. God is judging America right now for her deeds. And what this means is it's God that is doing it. It is a divine mandate, and it's going to consist of various events and various things. And tonight I'm going to share the events that occur in a judgment that comes from God. I'm going to share the points that we can find in Scripture, because all of this can be found in the Bible. Now, number two, the other thing that America and the world is witnessing right now is end-time Bible prophecy. What that means is prophetic events are taking place because the world chessboard is being arranged with the positioning of nations, the positioning of political powers. We are seeing the recruitment and the placement of players who are going to be allowed to steer this world into the final chapter. And what that also means is this world is going to be steered into the final lapse of the end of days. And based on what I just said, it's crucial that all of us not only are curious to understand, but all of us need to seek to understand the complete picture, which includes all of the participants of the present narrative, the present story. Now, Doug, you mentioned at the beginning of the program, this thing's going to affect everyone, and you are exactly right, because the other thing that everyone must come to terms with, in spite of denial, in spite of resistance, in spite of trying to change the subject when you're sharing with your friends, it doesn't matter. The entire planet's going to participate. And that means that we're going to participate in it. All the citizens in your town, on your street, on your block, the people sitting next to you at church are going to participate in this thing. The people that live next door to you that you go to work with, family, friends, humans throughout the world are going to participate in this thing. Also, God and his angels are going to participate in this thing. And then also, Satan and his demonic minions, the evil spirit, are going to participate on this thing. So basically, all of the real estate of planet Earth is going to participate in the coming narrative that has now started. Now,
all right.
My ministry, I'm sorry?
No, I just want to say, okay, and I think that's important for people to understand that there's no running from what we're about to see and experience.
There is no running, and the sad part, Doug, is, when I'm out and about and I go into a hardware store or a Walmart or wherever I might be, I talk to people, and out of curiosity, because I want to see what their heartbeat is, I throw out some questions. I ask them, so when's the recovery coming? And then it's interesting on all of the answers that you get. Now, if you ask a real estate agent that question, they'll tell you the recovery is already here. And, of course, you might smile and laugh. But if you have enough information, then you can ask the next question. Are you – because when people tell me that we're in recovery, or when a real estate agent tells me that we're in a recovery, I then ask the question again to them, and I say, okay, I want to ask you the question again, and I want you to tell me that answer with a straight face. I want to tell me like you really believe that. And then at that point, they start stuttering, and they say, I got to go. Thanks for being here. Here's my card, and they leave. But people do not want to face what's going on because, by nature, Americans are optimistic, and that's good. But what we are facing right now is shattering the paradigms that we grew up with and what we are used to and what we are willing to accept. And my ministry has been dissecting this story, this narrative, and sharing it for years. So I just want to say, and Doug, thank you for announcing that, all of the information that I'm going to share tonight can be found on my website. I have over 200 audio messages. They're free. You can go there, listen to them, and get familiar with the information there. Now, when God decides that it's time to judge a nation or a people or a kingdom, he always warns in advance. Now, that's one of the most important things that must be stated and that needs to be understood, because he cares for everybody. He loves humanity. He loves the person out there that's living under a bridge, that has left his family and is addicted to alcohol. He loves them. If you're listening to this in a motel room and you're all alone and you feel abandoned, listener, I want you to know that God loves you. And so what he is doing right now is he's been recruiting voices and messengers, and he has been raising them up and equipping them with the information to tell the world what time it is and what's going on. And Doug and Joe, God bless you guys. God raised you up, and you landed on the ground going 300 miles an hour. God bless you. But he's raising up voices to announce to the people what's happening. Now, the challenge in doing this
Nathan, I want to say this. That was not our intent, by the way. And I believe, like, you're very similar to your life and how you are, and other people listening to this. It's not necessarily our intent. It's what God does, where God puts us, all of us, the collective us, by the way. And we've got the road rash to prove that, he's striking the ground at 300 miles an hour, or, So I just want to say it's not what we have planned or what we planned or what we set out to do, but what God, put us out to do, set us out to do. So, but thank you. Go ahead.
And thank you for that. And I also want to say this to the listeners that are out there. I get emails from individuals who say, Nathan, God has been stirring me. I've been backslid, but I am now finding renewal with God. I've come back to him. I've repented. And God is bringing people back to him by the hundreds, by the thousands, and he's plucking them out from the world right now, and he's stirring them up, and he's awakening them. And some of them, he's calling them to also be watchmen, to be messengers, to be voices, to warn their friends, family, because listeners, you will touch people that the Hagmanns cannot touch or that I cannot touch. But together, every one of us can be a voice and touch the people that God has placed around us. So I just want to challenge, if some of you are experiencing something like that, it's a God thing, and continue seeking and just submit to it, because God is raising up his messengers. He always does this, and that's what I wanted to say. When God raises a messenger, first, he has to allow events to happen in the person's life that pours out and purges and refines that person first, because they can't be full of themselves. So what God allows to happen is he allows them to be shaken, stirred, and poured out, and he allows events to come into their life that will give them a renewed perspective of what's important, of family, of spiritual renewal, and the things of God. And he is also doing that worldwide. He's doing that to many, many people in America. And we're going to talk about that further and further on in this broadcast, because that's the bottom line of why God allows judgment. The most important reason, some people have said, Nathan, why would God do that? God is a God of love. He wouldn't allow America to go under judgment because he loves America. But that is not a complete analysis of what the Bible tells us, because it says in the book of Isaiah, chapter 26, verse 9, and if you're taking notes, write this down. It says, for when his judgments are in the earth, then the inhabitants of the earth will learn righteousness. And many times that's what it takes for people to be awakened. So God is going to allow America to be shaken and the world to be shaken for a reason and to get a result. And I also want to say this. I'm not just sharing these things to spook everyone, to scare them, and to tell them that there is no hope, because there is hope in God. And that's going to be the final portion of this program. So please listen to this in its entirety. God has a reason, but he loves his people. Now, before he judges a nation, as I was stating, he warns them first, and he lets them know what is coming in advance. And in order to do this, he raises up messengers, and he gives the messengers different gifts. So let me just share what has happened to me. Over the past few years, God has revealed to me glimpses of coming events, and that's one of the key words. It's a glimpse. It's a part of some of the things that are coming. In the book of Joel, in the scriptures, it says, in the last days I will pour out my spirit on all flesh, sons and daughters. This means young people will prophesy. People will see visions. Young men will dream dreams. And when that happens, it's going to stir people like never before. And Doug and Joe, I get emails from people every day that are telling me that they had a dream that was unlike any dream they have ever witnessed. And the dreams are of events that have to do with tyranny, martial law, very spooky Hollywood production level images and glimpses of things that are coming. And this is what's amazing. God is doing this worldwide to his people. He is sharing his prophetic dreams and visions to his people. So again, listeners, if this might be happening to you, I want to encourage this. You're not crazy. But if you share it with some people that do not understand this gifting, they will think you're crazy. So I would just advise you to write it down and to seek the counsel of mature Christians, pray about it, and see if you can back it up in the Scriptures. So that's a side note. Now, the glimpses that God has shared with me. Tonight I want to share some of them, Doug, and we don't have enough time in the 3 hours to share all of them, but let me just go down the list of the bullet point titles of the topics of some of the things that God has revealed to me. And as I share the topics of them, what this means is these are the events that are coming to America. Some of them have already started, and I am amazed that I have had prophetic dreams, and, for example, 3, 4, 5 years ago, and now I am seeing legislation that is bringing those things about. I'm hearing news reports that's bringing those things about. Now, I also want to say this. I'm not the only one that this is happening. I want to stress that. Nathan Liao is nothing special. I'm just one of the guys that was minding my own business, and God knocked me on the ground and let me crawl around in the mud for a while he humbled me and purged me and refined me. And then when it was time for me to stand up, God said, okay, Nathan, this is what's going to happen. You don't share your opinion. You're going to share what I tell you to share. You share what I show you, and that's it. And then I'll do the rest. So that's what I'm doing, Doug. That's what I'm doing. And the hard challenge of this task is that when people hear that someone is warning of what's coming, and when people hear that an individual is sharing a glimpse or they're sharing something that they say that is going to happen in the future, the human part of the natural man resists it. It causes anger, and it causes scoffing and mocking. And people who are not awake and who do not understand or who are satisfied with their lukewarm Christianity will resist it because they don't want you to challenge them out of their comfort zone. But nevertheless, this is the way it happens. So let me go down the list right here. A quick summary. Number one, the United States dollar is going to collapse. I saw it happen in several dreams. I saw people standing in line for food. I saw a glimpse of where regular individuals had to go to the local schools and get into the school cafeteria to find food. I saw glimpses of where shopping malls were shut down and the stores were out of business, but the courtyard where the food is cooked in restaurants and shopping malls was taken over by the government, and they were feeding people. And people still had to give a token. They had to pay for part of the food, but the prices that I saw in my glimpses were, as an example, an average meal in school was $30. I saw cups of coffee costing $10. Hyperinflation is going to come. That's one thing that is very, very important. I have been screaming for years. Folks, get ready, get prepared, get out of debt, have a car that is paid off. Do not let yourself get repoed because you'll be walking. And one time I even said sarcastically, if you see an abandoned shopping cart in the ditch somewhere, you better grab it because if you're not paying attention and preparing, that's where you're going to be having all your possessions in a shopping cart, because we're also going to see refugees walking the roads and the streets of America. Moving on, banks are going to fail. The small banks across the United States of America are going to be shut down. They're going to be taken over, and the money that's in those banks is going to be taken over by the U.S. government. Next, the retirement funds of Americans is going to be stolen by the federal government. I saw a glimpse of that. And, Doug, we were talking off the air. You said that you read my dream about the eagle and the fox. By the way, some of what I'm saying right now is found on my website under Prophecies, Dreams, and Visions, so you can go there to read about them. Another thing that's coming is the Constitution of the United States of America is going to be destroyed. It's going to be butchered. Liberty is going to be killed, and we're going to talk about that a little later, but the end result is going to be that freedoms as we know it are going to be gone in America. America is going to turn into a tyrannical dictatorship. Also, another 9/11 type event is going to happen, and there may be several of them, which is going to play a role in the Constitution being destroyed. So that is coming. It's going to change the laws. Also, there's going to be war. The United States of America is going to be attacked on our soil, on our domestic soil. Cities are going to burn. I've seen tsunamis hit the coastlines. I've seen flooding. I've seen pestilence. And I have also seen the poisoning of the waters that America drinks, the fresh waters and also the salt water. In addition to that, something is going to happen to the state of Colorado. I saw the state of Colorado go black, and in particular the area of Denver and Colorado Springs. Those areas are going to go black. A blackness is going to shroud that area with something very dark and very evil. And speaking of darkness, I also saw darkness arriving over the entire country in the form of a cloak, and it's going to arrive over America, and I saw it give birth to dark black tornadoes of evil and destruction. And I know just right there, Joe and Doug and listeners, I know that what I'm sharing right now is hard to hear. But I've been at this thing for years, and for some people that are saying, Nathan, God would not do that. I'm sorry, I disagree. Well, folks, it doesn't matter if you agree or disagree. It has already begun. It has started. And for the person that would say, Nathan, America has sent missionaries around the world. He has blessed America. We are founded on good principles. It says God on our money, etc. I've heard all the arguments. I've heard the objections. And when people say, why would God do this? You see, this is the bottom line question. Why, Nathan? If you're right, and if God is judging America, then tell us why. Why is he doing this? Well, I'm going to explain that. And I'm going to explain that the inauguration is also going to be a part of God's judgment. But as I explain these things, again, it has to be approached from the right perspective. So let's talk about the judgment of America, because this is one of the foundation things that needs to be understood. And I call this the fourfold judgment. I have explained it on my website. I have articles about it. The Watchman on the Wall program, News from the Wall program number 8, is a 2-hour explanation of this, but let me just give a brief outline of what this means. Number 1, when God judges a nation, he always does it in 4 categories. And these categories can be found in the Bible. They can be found in the book of Ezekiel. So if you're taking notes, it's found in Ezekiel chapter 5. And it says, when I send upon them evil arrows of famine, which shall be for their destruction, I will send to destroy you. I will increase the famine upon you, and I will break your staff of bread. Now, this is God talking. And then he goes on, and I will send upon you famine, evil beasts, so that they shall bereave thee, and pestilence and blood shall pass through thee, and I will bring the sword upon thee. I, the Lord, have spoken. This is, again, Ezekiel chapter 5, verse 16 and 17. It's also found in other areas of Scripture. It's found in the books of Moses. God said, my people Israel, obey me when you get to your promised land. But if you don't, here is what will happen. And God went into the details. Now, in America, right now, in the present narrative of America, if we were to actually itemize the things that we see happening in America, it is incredible that they are actually falling under the categories of what I'm about to mention in the fourfold judgment. Number 1, famine. What is famine? Well, famine is when people have no food. Famine is when there is rampant starvation. Famine is when there's difficulty in acquiring food. Famine is where people can go to the store and maybe if there is food, they cannot afford it because the economy is so terrible, because they don't have a job, because they don't have money, they have empty wallets. There are different reasons for famine. Sometimes God sends drought. Sometimes he sends earth changes. Maybe there's a lack of distribution. When we look at all of the reasons that famine happens, and then we compare it to America, well, in my intro, I shared that we have a record number of Americans on food stamps right now, approaching 50 million, Doug. I'm sure you've heard those stats. It's a crazy off-the-charts number, right? The EBT card. When we saw the first Great Depression, there were soup lines. And we have the pictures, the black and white images to refer back to, and people might say, well, that's not happening now. But, oh, my friends, if the individuals who are on food stamps were not given food stamps, how many would be in line at some local food bank or at a school or at some government FEMA line handing out bread and porridge? So famine is part of the judgment. And right now we are just seeing the beginnings of it. We are not finished. Famine has just walked through the threshold of America. It's been around several years since the crash of 2008. Famine started. And have you noticed that the cereal boxes are shrinking at the grocery store? All of the foodstuffs are shrinking. And maybe they may say, some people will say, well, prices aren't going up. Really? Have you looked at the Cracker Jack box lately? Have you looked at the candy corn popcorn lately? Have you looked at Ben & Jerry's ice cream? That thing is, what, 2 bites? It's insane. It's a joke. So famine is happening right now, but it's under a facade. And when I go into Safeway and I see an employee, I'll ask them, why are the boxes shrinking? And they don't have an answer. I don't know. Things are going up. But in the natural, why are the boxes shrinking? It's because the dollar's losing value. The American currency is already losing its value. The world is dumping the dollar, and because the dollar's losing value, things are becoming more expensive, but it has been shielded from the average consumer because they don't want to believe it and because things are shrinking. Now, I'm sorry, Doug, were you going to say something?
No, not at all, except that you're right. I mean,
The virtual bread lines.
That's a good,
Yeah, the destruction of America, as I say, I mean, the country is fallen, the freedoms are gone, the money's dead. It's just being held up by an illusion right now until we will see the hammer drop.
Exactly. It's a house of cards illusions. That's a very important key point. Now, the next part of the judgment, it's pestilence. What is pestilence? Well, that's disease, that's plague, and also it is death. Now, at this moment, we don't have cholera running rampant, just killing everybody, or some Ebola virus, or some viruses or flus that are taking over the fear of America. That's not happening at the moment, but pestilence has begun to arrive. But again, most people aren't thinking about it. But let me give you 2 categories of areas where it's happening. Number 1, the BP Gulf spill in the Gulf of Mexico. The Deepwater Horizon spill occurred several years ago, 2010, and BP was allowed to dump paint stripper into the Gulf of Mexico by the millions and millions of gallons, and it has effectively destroyed the sea life and the marine biology of the Gulf of Mexico. And for the person that is willing to investigate this untold story, they can find the reports of the lamenting and grieving shrimpers who at one time in a healthy economy, before this happened, would go shrimping, and they were able to bring in a haul of 300, 400, 500 pounds of shrimp, and now they're only bringing in 20, 30, 50 pounds of shrimp. And the scary part about this is that the shrimp they're pulling out of the Gulf of Mexico have no eyeballs. The shrimp are deformed. They're seeing fish with lesions and boils all over them. They're seeing oysters that are deformed. The sea life is destroyed in the Gulf of Mexico. Also, the aftermath, the fumes, the residue, the core exit is going inland. It is affecting the health of a lot of people, and it's a slow death that is occurring. And for those that live along the Gulf of Mexico, I would ask you to please re-examine your belief in the official story and re-examine the village, the amount of discernment you're using when you feed your family from the fish and the food that's in there. And that's a whole other show, but famine is also going to be affected by the Gulf of Mexico. We're not finished with that story. And the disease of pestilence is also occurring in the Gulf of Mexico. We are not finished with that. But pestilence also arrived from Fukushima, the radiation. How many rads of radiation came across the ocean in the ill winds and came down as rain in California and on the West Coast or in the Midwest or all the way to the East Coast? How much radiation poisoning really happened, gentlemen? How much leukemias have started because of that already? How much cancers have already begun? How many infants have already died because of that? That's the other untold story. But that's another part of the judgment, pestilence. And when that event happened and when the Gulf spill happened, I went and I asked God, is that the completion of your pestilence and the waters being poisoned? Because he gave me a prophecy several years ago that said that he's going to poison the waters of America. And I asked him, were we finished? And God made it very clear, no, we're just getting started. There is a lot more coming. The fresh water of America is going to be poisoned in the future. Water is going to be undrinkable in the future. That's coming. Okay, now let's go to the next portion. The sword judgment. That's part 3. What is the sword? Well, it's real easy. A sword is a weapon. A sword is used for war. A sword is used to fight an enemy. So when God allows the sword judgment to come over a land, that means that they get attacked by an enemy. It means that they are overcome, invaded, and overwrought by an enemy. And who's the enemy going to be for America? Well, that's going to play out in the future. That is coming, ladies and gentlemen. The sword judgment also includes tyranny. It includes oppression. It includes vexation from dictatorial leadership. So the politics of America is going to change to the point where it's going to be very, very unpleasant for Americans. The sword judgment is coming. That is very important to understand. And when Israel had to deal with results of a sword judgment, here's the sad part of the story. They didn't win. They were overcome. They lost because God wanted them to lose. He needed to make his point. He needed to allow them to get the message. And one of the unfortunate languages that humans only understand is the language of pain and discomfort. One of the unfortunate languages that Americans finally succumb to that gets them to look up to heaven and say, oh, God, I now see that you are real. I now see that I've been ignoring you. It's the language of pain. So America is going to experience the sword judgment. And then finally, this is the one that we're going to concentrate in a good portion of this program. That has to do with the evil, noisome beast part of the judgment. Now, what is that? In the Old Testament, when God allowed the beast judgment to take place, it occurred in two manners. It occurred in two worlds, in two perspectives. Number one, it occurred in the physical realm, where actual animals, lions and bears and crazed rabid birds would attack the people. God allowed the people to be overcome by animals. But in addition to that, the word for noisome beast, when we look the word up in the Old Testament, the word noisome means evil, and when we cross-reference it with other references to evil and beasts, then we start seeing a different picture. We start seeing that God has given us a glimpse of the invisible realm, the demonic realm, the realm of fallen angels and demons, and this is the realm where God allowed Israel to be overcome by fallen spirits, by evil, by demons. Now, why in the world would God do this? To the natural person listening, they say, Nathan, that's crazy. God loved Israel. He would not do that. Here's why. Because God always allows choices to his people. And the choice that he's always made clear is you either choose me or you choose the world. You either choose to worship me or choose to worship Baal. And throughout Israel's history, they battled and struggled with worshiping Baal. Baal was the false god that came from Babylon. Baal was the entity that, and this is a whole other program. I've gone into this in great detail, but when Nimrod founded Babylon, he had a wife whose name was Semiramis, and they had a son whose name was Tammuz. And after Nimrod died, his wife told the people that he was a god. And so they started worshiping Nimrod, and they changed his name to Lord Nimrod, or Baal Nimrod, because Baal means Lord. And then over time, Nimrod was dropped, and then it was just called Baal. And the people continued to worship Baal. Meanwhile, his wife, the widow, her name was Semiramis, and her name evolved into a lot of names of that same woman that is worldwide, but in different regions, different cultures, different records that we can find in antiquities. It's the same woman, and it goes back to Babylon and Nimrod, and her name evolved into Asherah, Ashtar, Ishtar, Venus, Diana. It's the same person. The pagan worshippers of witchcraft, of the esoteric arts today, still worship this entity. But the origin of it was Babylon. And then we have their son, Tammuz, whose name also changed. So we may cover that if we have enough time later in the program, but Israel loved Baal worship. Now, when I was a young Christian, I always wondered to myself, why in the world did they worship statues? That's dumb. Why would God's people struggle with that? When the children of Israel saw the pillar of fire when they escaped Egypt, and they saw the cloud and the Red Sea parted, and they saw God in his majesty, why in the world would they worship a dumb statue? It doesn't make sense. And to our natural mind, it does not make sense. But this is part of the history that is very rarely spoken about, and it is this. Baal worship in its true form way back then was actually a sexual ritual. And when Baal worship took place, it turned into a fertility ritual, which also included orgies and immorality and fornication. And so a true Baal worship session appeased to the flesh. So that is what the attraction was. It was sexual. And when we look at the downfall of America today, it's the same thing. The sexual revolution that started in the 60s has now been the downfall.
Exactly. I was going to say, otherwise known as the 1960s and 70s, for those people old enough to remember that.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
So God told Israel, knock it off. And he would raise up voices, he would raise up prophets to go to the Israelites and say, God sees what you're doing, and he wants you to stop. This is your last warning. And usually the people would throw rocks at the prophets and the messengers, make fun of them, and kill the messenger, and then what would happen? God would allow the evil beast to invade. Now, what were the beasts? Well, when they worship Baal, Baal is a false god. And in Baal worship, that is the other portion of the ceremony that's included, is evil spirits, demons. So God said, okay, if you really want to worship these demons, have at it. I'm going to pull away my hedge of protection over you, Israel, and I'm going to allow more demon spirits to come in, and some of you are going to get demon-possessed, and you're going to go mad, you're going to go insane, you're going to be frothing at the mouth, and you're going to commit suicide, and it's going to be a sad end for you, so here you go. And we have seen this story over and over, this account over and over. When the children of Israel said, we want flesh, Moses, we don't want the manna, the angel food, we want flesh. Give us bird food. Give us meat. So God said the same thing again. Oh, you want flesh? I'm going to let you have flesh till it's coming out of your nose. And we see the account in the Old Testament. So the judgment of evil beasts is when God says, I've had it. If you really want to play with darkness, if you want to play with these demons of these strongholds of lust, and adultery, and fornication, and murder, then I'm going to let you really see what they can do. So in America, now, ladies and gentlemen, this is what is so, so important. America is going to be allowed to be invaded by evil spirits, by demons, by fallen angels. God is going to allow a swarm of slime, of darkness, of evil pollution to infect America. And I have stated in my previous programs that in the physical realm, when this happens, how is it going to look? Well, it's going to look like what we saw in Florida when the the homeless person took off all of his clothes and ate the face of the other homeless person? You folks remember that? Remember that, Doug? Bizarre. How bizarre. I don't think we can get more bizarre than that. I read the account that when the police officer encountered him and he said, "Get off," he looked up and growled. And so the police officer shot and killed him. But that person was obviously demon-possessed. And so I have shared that sort of manifestation is going to increase, and it's going to be a manifestation that is going to be the thing of nightmares. It's going to be nightmarish. So I have also rewarded the same thing as the zombie apocalypse. Hollywood has glamorized the zombies and blamed it on a virus or some kind of plague, or at first it was The Walking Dead, but now it's a virus. Well, we're going to see the zombie apocalypse happen, but the fuel for the zombies is going to be demons. And we have an account, a little glimpse of how this is going to occur. We can read about it in the Gospels. When Jesus crossed the Sea of Galilee, he was encountered by the crazed maniac, the Gerasene demoniac is what it's called, and this demon-possessed person ran to Jesus and said, "We know who you are. You are the Son of God. Have you come here to torment us before our time?" And then they said, "Please don't throw us into the bottomless pit, into the abyss." They were afraid of Jesus. And then Jesus said, "Who are you? What's your name?" And they said, "We are legion, for we are many." Now, according to opinion, how many is in a legion? Doug, are you familiar with how many it takes to be in a legion? Is it 50, 100?
No.
Is it 1,000?
10,000?
Several thousand?
Maybe. I say 10,000.
Several thousand, I've heard. I've heard different numbers, up to 6,000. But this guy had demons in him, and he was also naked. The account tells us they put him in chains, and he was able to break the chains, and he would take off his clothes. Now, when we look at the Florida account of the face eater, the cannibal, we see the same thing. He took off his clothes. Same thing. Demon-possessed people take off their clothes and go crazy. And during a short period of time, God was giving us a glimpse of what's coming, because over the next few weeks, I read probably 5 to 10 different accounts of where across the entire country and several times in Florida, people who they say were on bath salts took off their clothes and started turning into cannibals. But it was demonic. This was a glimpse of what is coming. It's an attack of evil beasts. Now, Doug, I'm looking at the clock. How are we doing? Are we going to take a break, or do I keep on?
Well, we're up, getting close up against the top of the hour, but I just want to recap, Mr. Leo. As the first hour we just went over, just to recap here. So some of the glimpses, and one thing I liked that you pointed out here was that God raises up messengers as watchmen to warn nations, and some of the points you covered, and folks, in case you're joining us late, some of the points that Mr. Leo covered is some of the things we're going to see here inside the United States is our dollar is going to collapse. Of course, the high inflation rate is coming. It's going to lead to many refugees. Banks will fail. They'll shut down. Retirement funds are going to be stolen from the government. We're going to have a 9/11 type event or series of events take place. Tyrannical government, of course. Our Constitution is going to be sabotaged. War is coming to our shores. The United States is going to be attacked. We have there's a darkness that you spoke of overtaking the state of Colorado, specifically the Denver area, but throughout Colorado, it's a kind of a black cloth, if you will, over Colorado. A cloak of darkness all over America. Those are some of the glimpses that you were provided. And then, of course, you talked about the judgments being famine, pestilence, judgment by the sword, and also you had made some equivalencies with Israel. So that about covers what you've gone through the first hour, laying this foundation for what we're about to see. Is that a pretty accurate recap, Mr.
Beautiful.
Leo?
Yes, that was a very good summary. Yes.
All right, folks, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. I want to thank you, Nathan, for keeping us on target here. Sometimes we do broadcast simulcast on AM stations, and sometimes they yell at us for going over. Folks, you're listening to the Hagmann Report on this, the 10th day of January 2013. Our very special guest is Mr. Nathan Leal. He is the head of the website watchmanscry.com, which is accessible via our website, HomelandSecurityUS.com. That's HomelandSecurityUS.com. We'll be right back after 2 or 3 messages. Stay with us. Hi folks, Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the Internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eileen Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
Survival of the fittest. In any and all situations, survival is your number one priority. That requires being tough and thinking smart. And the folks at Freeze Dry Guy are going to help you do just that. They have the long-range patrol ration entrees, what they call the Brick Pack. When you're in survival mode, it is absolutely the best item for your survival pack or bug-out bag. You can go farther, faster, and carry more food with the LRP cold weather ration entrees. Not only do these long-lasting, durable entrees help sustain you or your family through the harshest environment or situation, they are by far the most delicious of their kind. No contest. With a variety of tasty entrees, you can't beat the LRP Brick Packs. Let Freeze Dry Guy help you in your survival situations. Go to freezedryguy.com. That's freezedryguy.com. Or call 866-404-3663. That's 866-404-FOOD.
You better wake up fast and listen to this, America. The Obama campaign has launched attack squads disguised as truth teams dedicated to intimidating and silencing all political dissent carried over the internet that criticizes the Marxist Obama. Truth squads specifically focused on covering up Obama's endless trail of lies, corruption, and subversion, and using the Gestapo power of our own government to police and censor the internet and shut down websites that dare to carry the real truth about Obama's Marxist coup. Remember the names of these Gestapo-style agencies at work right there in your neighborhood: KeepingHisWord.com, KeepingGOPHonest.com, and AttackWatch.com. KGB, SS, and Gestapo-style police-state gangster organizations at work to silence the important voices of patriot dissent, some of which have already been shut down by Obama's orders. Adolf Hitler would have been proud. We're the 21st century Tea Party patriots.
Hold on to your seats. The Hagmann and Hagmann flight is now taking off. Doug and Joe Hagmann have cleared the runway of TSA agents, jihadists, political crackpots, and global elitists. Now get ready for some real news. Here they are, Doug and Joe Hagmann.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 2 of this Thursday, January 10th, 2013 edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. We are blessed to be joined by very special guest Nathan Leal of watchmanscry.com. Visit his website after the show. You can find many podcasts, articles, and excellent teachings that you will want to hear, and bookmark that site for future reference.
Yeah, you know what, Mr. Leal, are you back with us?
Yes, I'm here.
All right. You know what, during the break, got a question for you. You know, something you said about the glimpses. You mentioned Colorado. You mentioned Denver in particular, I believe. Did you not call Denver, Colorado Springs, that area?
I did.
Okay.
Yes.
The only thing that always bothered me, and this was shared with me during the break, the Denver International Airport, the murals on the wall. Any comments about those? I mean, I don't want to break stride here or get off on a tangent, but it just seems out of place for being in an airport. Any comments on that? There's a statue.
Yeah,
outside.
I used to live in Colorado several years ago, and I have been at Denver Airport many times. I've taken pictures of it. I've walked around. I've prayed and asked God. I've tried to seek understanding. And the thing that I am always left with when I've done that is that there's a shroud of darkness in that place. There's a presence of, it's a bizarre type of coldness, of evil, and I really, really believe that place has been reserved for something that is going to happen in the future. And as I stated, when I saw a glimpse, I had a prophetic dream where I saw darkness come over southern Colorado, mid-Colorado, and I never knew what it meant. I never knew when it was going to happen, but I have always just known in my spirit and my discernment that something's going on there. It's
okay. All right.
Very bizarre.
And yeah, it is. I've been to a lot of airports. Never been to DIA, Denver International Airport. But I have talked to people who have been there, and they said, it's just really weird. But that said, welcome back to the Hagmann Report for the second hour. I'm going to give you once again the floor for this hour. We recapped at the end of before the break, recapped everything. Go ahead and pick it up from here, Mr. Leal, where we need to go, knowing, of course, that in your sights is the inauguration and the importance of that date and the time, that checkpoint in history, what's going to happen there. But even before that, I'm going to let you set the stage and set the pace. So take it away.
Okay. As I have been part of this discipline, part of this calling for the last several years, I have spent a long time, many times, hours and sessions where I've been on my knees crying out to God, asking Him what to do, what to say, what does He want me to share, wanting His utterance, because you see the bottom line of this is we can't give the utterance of our head. We can't share from our own logic. It needs to come from the Holy Spirit. So I spend time to make sure that I do that. And when I've sought God over and over, I have said, God, is it going to be stopped? Will it turn around? And unfortunately, up to this point, gentlemen and listeners, the Holy Spirit has told me that no, the events are going to play out and they're going to sting. They've already started. God is allowing it, and it's going to take place through its fullness. Now, a lot of people don't want to hear that, and I don't want to hear that. Now, for the people that may say, Nathan, you just hate America, you're not a patriot, you're talking negative, I love this country, Mr. Doug. I grew up as an American citizen. I went to baseball games in Houston when I was growing up, and hundreds of them. I would watch the Astros. I did the apple pie in baseball, and I would get the tear in my eye when the Jets fly over at different sports events. And there is a part of every red-blooded American that makes them proud to be an American. Even to this day, there's something that's very, very special because that's where we come from. So as I'm watching America die, it is not with happiness and it is not with celebration that I share these things. It is with lament. It is with grief. It is with sadness. It is with tears. There have been many times where when I was recording the program, I had to shut off the recorder because I couldn't go on. I was too broken, and then I had to compose myself and turn it back on and finish my program. And this thing is not a good thing. It is not happiness. So I love this country. I want to say that. I'm disappointed on what's happening, but I am grieving the death of America, just like I'm pretty sure 99.9 of the listeners are doing it, and just like you, Doug and Joe, are doing. So when I pray to God, I say, God, will it be stopped? God says no. And when I say, God, why not? The Holy Spirit says, you know why not. It's in the Word.
And we know what the Word says. The Word says, if my people, that famous verse that we've all heard, if my people who are called by my name will humble themselves, turn from their wicked ways, etc., then I will heal their land. I will stop it. I will turn it around. But here's the sad part. That has not happened. In fact, quite the contrary. America is backsliding. America is turning into an infidel. America is experiencing her metamorphic fall and change into something that we no longer recognize. Now, on January the 20th, we're going to have the inauguration on Sunday, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment. But the day after, on January the 21st, Martin Luther King Day, they're going to have another ceremony on TV. And then the day after that will be the 40-year anniversary of Roe versus Wade, which legalized abortion in the United States of America. And if we were to consider that event right there and the proximity to the inauguration, one who is observing and discerning would need to scratch their head and say, is there a connection? Well, when we look at the 40-year anniversary, and when we consider that in the last 40 years America has butchered over 50 million innocent babies, that cannot be forgotten. That means that an entire generation has lived while innocent babies have died. 4 decades. Now, has God forgotten that? Does he just wink at it? Does he say, oh, well, it's okay, they went to heaven, no problem, no big deal? Well, here's the answer. No, he does not. Because that blood is still crying out from the ground. And America has not repented. America, in fact, is getting worse. For the first time in American history, the census reported a few years ago, for the first time, that there are more households that are shacked up than there are married in America. So now we used to be the land of Ozzie and Harriet and Mr. Beaver Cleaver. We're no longer that. Now we're the nation of where's my baby's daddy? He took off. That's embarrassing. We're also the nation of same-sex unions, homosexuality. The church is in a flux of mire, of confusion, of apathy, of slumberville. The church is in deception and in complacency. And a lot of people may argue, Nathan, God doesn't judge, but they're just arguing their opinion. And they're arguing the opinion of man. But we know what the Bible says about the opinion of man and the feelings and of the heart. The Bible tells us the heart is deceitfully wicked. So when we include that, then we have to have something that we need to admit to ourselves. And listeners, I know that there are spiritual conditions all over the map in the audience right now. We have people who love God very much. We have people who are struggling. We have people who are thinking about it. We have people who are away from God, backslid. And then we might have people who are angry at God and want nothing to do with God. But it doesn't matter. Every one of us is going to live our lives, and then we're going to stand before God. So what are we going to do about it? We're also going to talk about that toward the end of our program. But America has lost her way, ladies and gentlemen. America is no longer Christian. The Democratic Convention made that very clear because they booed the God of Abraham right off the stage during the Democratic Convention. Doug, do you remember that event?
3 times. 3 times. Yes. And they voice vote. As a matter of fact, it was very uncomfortable for the Los Angeles mayor, I believe, who was up there taking a voice or roll call, or not a roll call, but a voice vote, and ultimately, after 3 attempts, verified the language, or I don't recall specifics other than the fact that the platform was decidedly changed by voice vote ultimately.
And here's the part that's very sobering. It was recorded in the Chronicles of God, in the Annals of Heaven, in the story of America, in the final chapters of America. It got recorded. The Bible says every idle word that is spoken, there will be an account. So America now will give an account. And what has replaced the void, though? They booed America. So what do the people really want? Well, here's what they choose instead of the God of heaven. They want the God of now. They want the God of pleasure, of convenience. Some of them want the God of the Muslims. Some of them want the God of the pagans. And some of them want the God of don't tell me what to do. I can do whatever I will to do. So lay off. You are intolerant. You are full of hate. So, ladies and gentlemen, here's the conclusion. America's new God is now Baal, who is represented by the jackal god from Egypt, Anubis, the false god that was represented as a statue. Joe and Doug, do you remember a few years ago that Anubis statue was paraded across the country? It went across New York Harbor. It had the face of a jackal, and it came from the Egyptian antiquities to announce the tour of King Tut's, some of his tokens and trinkets. It was going around different museums. So they used as a marketing tool this statue, and it went across the Statue of Liberty. Photos were taken of it. It was placed at DIA in front of the demonic horse, that blue horse in front of Denver Airport. You remember that?
Yes, I do.
That was a very profound event. It wasn't just a benign thing. What that did was help to seal the deal. What it helped to do was to invoke. It was a ritual in the underworld. It was a ritual that was conducted by the spirits of Satan and by very dark humans. And it was a ritual to do this and to announce formally that America no longer wanted to have the God of life, but now they wanted to have the God of death, because that's what Anubis represents. He's the God of death, of necropolis. So what does that tell us? This is what it means. Sadly, the bell has tolled for America, for Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam had a heart attack, and he had a stroke, and now he's on life support. And soon they are going to pull the plug on Uncle Sam, and when they do that, Uncle Sam is going to be taken over by dark, evil spirits and reanimated into a red, white, and blue creature from another world. He's going to be half man, half beast, and he's going to have a new agenda. And that new agenda is going to be powered by the powers of darkness, by the entities of hell. And I want to now segue into the what's coming during the inauguration, but I want to preface it with this, with one of my dreams that I had. And it's real important that I share this dream because it goes along with it. All right. Several years ago, I had a prophetic dream, and if you're a regular listener, you've heard me talk about it. If not, it's located on my website. And I had this prophetic dream, and I was standing in a field, and I was looking across the field. It was dark. It was nighttime. It was a mist along the ground, and a hill about 300 yards appeared in front of me, and it was a small hill, 50, 75 feet tall. And then the Statue of Liberty appeared on that hill. And I was looking at the Statue of Liberty, and I was wondering, where's the water? This is weird. And then I saw a crack form along her neck. Her head started leaning forward. It became disconnected. And then in slow motion, it tumbled down her body. It hit the ground, bounced, and came toward me. And then it stopped at my feet, and the dream was over. And I woke up, and I wondered to myself, what in the world did that mean? And in the natural, I didn't know what it meant, and I was trying to figure it out. I was very groggy. I was sleepy. And I wondered to myself, is structural failure going to happen to the Statue of Liberty? Is a plane going to hit it? I didn't know. And then I fell back to sleep, and I was back in the dream. Again, I'm in the field. I'm looking. The statue appeared, and then clouds started to appear over her head, and then a giant hand poked out of the clouds right over her head, and the hand was huge. And in the hand that was coming out of the clouds was a sword that was as long as the body of the Statue of Liberty. It was the hand of God. And I saw the hand rear back with the sword, and then it came forward, and it chopped her head off. And then the same thing happened. The head fell to the ground, bounced, came toward me, stopped, and then I heard the voice from heaven say, Liberty will be decapitated, and the dream was over. When I woke up then, I had a better idea of what it meant. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, when was this dream, Nathan?
This happened in 2008, I believe, approximately.
All right.
It was a long time ago. And I even have it. I have it. Okay, February the 2nd, 2008 is when I had it. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. When I woke up, I told my wife about it, and my policy is to always seek God before I publish a dream and ask Him. Sometimes I'll hold on to it for a while. Sometimes I won't even share it. And there are some dreams I still haven't shared to this day because I'm not released to do it. But I sought God over the course of 3 days, and on the third day, God started to speak to me. It was very late at night. The family was asleep. I was in my basement on my knees praying over my couch, and I had a notepad with me, and I was seeking God. And I said, God, I need to know what you meant by this dream. And then God started to speak. He said, an event is coming to the United States, and it's going to be a horrific event. It's going to shake the strongest among the people, and I want you to tell everybody about this event. And then I asked God, what event are you talking about? And He didn't answer that question. He kept going, and He said, I want you to share with them that it's going to shake the strongest among them. It's going to be so unbelievable. And now He has my attention, and I started to grieve. I started to lament. And I said, God, what kind of event are you talking about? And then God said this. He said, I want you to tell them to pray for the protection of their children. When this event happens, pray they are not separated from their children when it happens, and tell the people to pray for their children. So I was shaken when I heard that, Doug and Joe, because my wife and I, we just had our newborn, our baby daughter, and I was shaken. I said, God, what's going to happen to the children? God said, you just tell them. And I said, well, what does it mean? And God said, when that event happens, it's going to cause the laws of America to be changed, and liberty is going to be decapitated. The reason you saw the liberty on the Hill is because that's Capitol Hill. Legislation is going to occur from Washington. The new laws are going to occur that are going to destroy freedom. The United States will no longer be the same. Go tell the people. So I've been doing that for the last few years. If you're a regular listener, I have spoken about this dream many, many times. And I have also shared this. Folks, get in the habit of praying for your little children. Lift them up. Cry out to God. Pray for their protection. Okay. Now, let's move forward to the events that happened in December. I know that what occurred in Sandy Hook is now all over the map. I know it's being discussed. I know there's a lot of unanswered questions. I know that there's a lot of suspicious things with this, but the bottom line of the end result is that some people died. I don't know how many really died, but it was a horrific event. And because of Sandy Hook, the present administration is using that event, and they're riding the tide to change the Constitution and to butcher the Second Amendment. If you go to Drudge Report, there are all sorts of headlines, one after the other, of state governments, governors, state houses, the federal government. What's going to happen to the Second Amendment? It's all over the map. People are wondering. A lot of people are worried. A lot of people are scared. But they are using the event of Sandy Hook to make this happen. Now, one of the challenges that we need to always remember as we're watching this happen is to keep the correct perspective. And please, ladies and gentlemen, write this down, highlight it, underline it. Start the habit right now of praying for your children. And in order to do that, that's going to mean a lot of homework. It's going to mean that people are going to have to change their lifestyle. It's going to mean that people are going to have to forsake and finally do that New Year's commitment that they've been putting off for years of coming back to God, of repenting, stop being a prodigal. It's going to mean a lot of changes, and that's one of the challenges. Now, let me also include this. A few years later, when I had the dream about the dollar crashing, and when I saw the expensive food, and when I was seeking God, the Holy Spirit told me, Nathan, Lamentations is coming to America. And when I say, what do you mean by that? What that means is what is written in the Bible, in the book of Lamentations, many of those events that we can read in there are going to rhyme and be repeated in America. I've been sharing that for several years. The Holy Spirit revealed it's going to happen. It's not going to be stopped. So I also want to share this because in sharing what I'm about to say, now we're going to segue into the inauguration. The book of Lamentations was written by the prophet Jeremiah. Jeremiah lived during the Old Testament times, and God raised him up and God gave him the assignment to go warn Judah and Jerusalem, to warn the people that judgment was coming. And he had this assignment for 40 years. That's a long time, gentlemen, 40 years. His assignment lived through 5 different monarchies, 5 different administrations, if you will, of kings that came and went. Finally, the 5th king, his name was Zedekiah. He was the king of Judah, of southern Israel, Judah. Jerusalem was the home base. And Jeremiah had been telling Zedekiah, judgment's coming. But when we look in the scriptures, they tell us that he did evil in the sight of God. Zedekiah did not repent. He didn't do what he was supposed to do. Now, looking at the background of this individual, Zedekiah, well, he was placed in power over Jerusalem by Babylon's leader, Nebuchadnezzar. Because Nebuchadnezzar he had his takeover of the world at the time, and he was bulldozing over different regions, over different kingdoms, and what he would do was place vassal governments up. He would raise them up and place the puppets in there, and he would tell them to leave, he would tell them, I'll let you be the king as long as you give me your loyalty, and everything's going to be fine. You send me some of your goods, your taxes, etc. Everything's going to be okay as long as you obey me. So Nebuchadnezzar showed up 9 years previous to the fall of the attack of Jerusalem, and he placed Zedekiah in power. Over the course of 9 years, Zedekiah did not like it, and he started thinking to himself, I wish I could get out of this. I don't like Nebuchadnezzar telling me what to do. So Zedekiah went to Egypt, and he spoke to Pharaoh, and he said, hey, Pharaoh, will you watch my back if I rebel against Babylon? But Pharaoh wanted nothing to do with that because Babylon was the main kid on the block, if you will. He was on top of the mountain. He had all the big toys at the time. They were the empire, Babylon. So Nebuchadnezzar caught wind of what Zedekiah was thinking, and Nebuchadnezzar got mad. What? Zedekiah doesn't want me to be his godfather? He doesn't want me to protect him in the neighborhood? We'll see about that. So Nebuchadnezzar started planning to invade Jerusalem, to invade Judah. He was going to go teach Judah a lesson. Meanwhile, back in Judah, we have Jeremiah warning the people that invasion was coming, that judgment was coming. And meanwhile, the people listening, the children of Israel, were laughing at him and saying, you're crazy, you're a prophet of doom, you're gloom and doom, all you do is talk negative. Jeremiah, come on, get a life. They didn't believe him. If they only had known, ladies and gentlemen, what was happening behind the scenes while they were making fun of Jeremiah, because behind the scenes, before Nebuchadnezzar got on his chariot and said, okay, let's go to attack them. Before he got on the chariot that day with all the soldiers, several weeks previous, several months previous, I don't know how long the planning took place, but he had the military building program going on. He was sharpening his swords. He was creating spears. He was creating weapons. They were training soldiers. They were recruiting Babylonian soldiers and teaching them how to fight because they were going to be used to attack Jerusalem. Now, let's move forward to America. While people are making fun of you, Doug and Joe, and while people may mock you and tell you you're crazy and you're negative and you're making up all these stories about America, behind the scenes, in a different location, some of them are stateside, domestic. Some of them are in other countries. The enemy is sharpening their swords. The enemy is getting their weapons together. The enemy is sighting in their weapons, and they're sharpening their knives and their bows and their arrows. They are getting prepared to attack America. Stateside, there are people behind the scenes that are sharpening their swords, getting ready to attack America, because when the date and the whistle is blown and that gun is shot into the air, then it's going to be go time. That is coming. That's the part that cannot be forgotten and ignored. That is going to happen. Now, let's go back to Jerusalem. Finally, it happens. Nebuchadnezzar got on his chariot. They went on the journey. And as they got closer to Judah and Jerusalem, the watchman on the wall, up on the tower, could see in the horizon a cloud of dust gathering. They sent scouts out to go see what was approaching, and they saw the cloud of dust. They saw the thousands and thousands and thousands of imposing armed soldiers who were going to come and wreak havoc to Jerusalem. They ran back to Jerusalem and they said, shut the gate. Nebuchadnezzar's coming. Close up the gates. Everyone run in. Get your animals. Get them all inside the city gates. Close up the walls. And they did that. And this account is recorded in Jeremiah chapter 39. And for those that have their Bibles, I want to ask if you have one handy, go to Jeremiah chapter 39 because I'm going to share something. I'm going to share this account, and then we're going to talk about America. And I have it right here in front of me. Jeremiah chapter 39, verse 1. In the 9th year of Zedekiah, king of Judah, in the 10th month, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and all his army came against Jerusalem and besieged it. Now, I'm going to stop there. This was 9 years after Zedekiah was placed as the vassal. So he shows up. He besieges the city. Now, for those of you that have watched the medieval movies and, you know, the Lord of the Rings movies where they have the trebuchets and the catapults and they hurl rocks at the walls, we know those movies, the medieval weapons. When the enemies show up against the castle and they say, open the gate, lower the drawbridge, the castle has one of two choices. No, or tell us you will be nice to us, or they try to make arrangements, they try diplomacy, and if all else fails, then they'll keep hurling rocks at the castle until the walls are busted through. Okay, that's what happens. In this verse, chapter 1, in verse 1, Nebuchadnezzar showed up. In verse 2, it says, in the 11th year of Zedekiah, in the 4th month, on the 9th day of the month, the city was penetrated. Now, when we do the math, that's 18 months. So Babylon surrounded Jerusalem for a year and a half. Now, think about that. The citizens and the residents of Jerusalem could not leave the city. And whatever dried food they had, whatever freeze-dried food they had, whatever buckets of wheat and bug-out material and all of the prepping that they had done, that's all they had for the year and a half. Eventually, what happened? Well, eventually they ran out of food. And as they started to go hungry, they started dying of hunger. They got skinny. They pined away. They got sick. There was disease. And among the people that were in Jerusalem trying to survive, there were all levels of economic strength. There were the peasants, there were perhaps the lower class, and then there were the very rich ones. And it says in the Bible that the very wealthy among them sold their valuables just for bread because they were pining away. You have people selling their Rolex watches for a loaf of bread because they wanted food. But finally, they all started dying. And as this year and a half of Jerusalem being surrounded occurred, Jeremiah witnessed it. He was inside Jerusalem, and he recorded the diary of what took place, and that is found in the book of Lamentations. So Lamentations in the Old Testament is the diary of the siege. And I want to also ask the listeners to do this. Listeners, become familiar with the book of Lamentations. Read it, meditate on it, digest it, because that is what's coming to this nation. Lamentations is going to happen to America, and it's very interesting that this would be a whole other program, Joe and Doug, but in Lamentations, it starts out with the surprise and the shock of the residents of Jerusalem just being in disbelief that they would even be attacked because they thought that they were impenetrable. They thought that they could survive anything. They did not believe that anyone could overcome them because they believed that they were the apple in God's eye and God would never let harm come to them. And in the same way, citizens of America have a similar deception. They believe America could never be overwrought, America could never fall because God loves us so much. But the story is more than just love. The story has to do with obeying God. The story has to do with God's justice, his righteousness, and justice of the unborn, and justice against all the sins that have now taken America to be an embarrassment to the world, and that have taken America to a place that would shock our forefathers and our great-grandparents. Because of those things, America is going to fall. Now, in Lamentations, it talks about the ones that wanted to resist and wanted to flee and wanted to fight against Babylon and wanted to do a lot of things that they had in their mind. But it didn't matter what they thought, because reality is what happens. They were surrounded, and they could do nothing about it until the walls were penetrated. Now, in Jeremiah 39, chapter 2, there's a formula that I absolutely believe also applies to America. Because several years ago when God said, Nathan, Lamentations is going to happen to America, what that also meant was the thing that caused the siege of Jerusalem back then, Babylon showed up, is also going to happen to America. So if we are to apply Lamentations, we must also include that Babylon is going to attack America. And if that's the case, then let's read about what Babylon did. Well, in verse 3, it says, all the princes of the king of Babylon came in and sat at the middle gate. So finally, when they busted through the gate, the princes of Babylon came in. And then when we read further, it says Zedekiah tried to escape. It was nighttime. He tried to get away, but they caught him. They placed chains around him. They gouged out his eyes. They killed his son. It was a very sad thing that happened to Jerusalem. It says they murdered all the nobles of Judah. It says that they burned all of the houses. They burned the rich houses, and they tore down the walls of Jerusalem. They also took the citizens into captivity. The majority of them were taken to Babylon. And they left just a few people behind, the poor people who vowed to Nebuchadnezzar that they would take care of the crops and the vineyards and send all of the bounty back to Babylon. So they were slaves, and they were willing to stay slaves. Now, when we look at this account and we apply it to America, here's what's very, very interesting. Now, if you have already read the article that I've put out, and I'm pretty sure many people have that are listening, but let's talk about it now. When we look at the cipher formula that is found in verse 2, we can see something that's very, very interesting, because it has a formula of a timeline. It says, in the 11th year, 4th month, 9th day. When we apply this to America, there's another individual, Mr. Rabbi Kahn, who was able to uncover some prophecies that disclosed and revealed that 9/11 was a turning point in God's judgment on America. That began the foundation, the foundational layer of America's fall. And I'm sure many people are on the same page with that. That's also another program, and that's his book, The Harbinger. But the reason I'm bringing it up is because...
Yeah, let me just interject here. What you're saying, Nathan, if we understand this correctly, 9/11/2001 is a checkpoint in time. It's a kind of a bookmark of God in the book of American history.
Exactly.
For lack of so exactly. When we talk about so everyone just keep that in mind that people say the world changed on 9/11/2001, the day the world changed, and of course the day America changed. So, all right, just to be clear on that, so 9/11/2001 is a checkpoint in history. Okay, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, now I go into a lot of detail in one of my programs that explains all of this. After 9/11, how interesting is it that America, for the first time, started openly celebrating, announcing, it was revealed, it was exposed, whistleblowing, etc., that now we were the bad guys. We were the torturers. And it was justified because it's for the betterment of everybody. So then we started seeing the Patriot Act and all these different acts that came forward. The habeas corpus was butchered. The Constitution started being destroyed back then. Mr. Dick Cheney stated publicly that in order for us to do the war on terror, we have to go to the dark side. America invaded Iraq. America took over Iraq. America stole the antiquities that were in the museums of Iraq. Saddam Hussein was trying to rebuild ancient Babylon, and we went in there and stole all those things. We still, to this day, we don't know what they took. But I believe that there were some things that go all the way back to Nimrod, some very satanic-type vessels and trinkets, etc. That's another program. But those things were very pivotal. America, in other words, morphed into Iraq's big brother, and they became the same family. It was the beginning after 9/11. Now, when we take the date of September 11th, 2001, and we apply this formula, it says in the 11th year, 4th month, 9th day. Okay. September 11th, 01. Let's add 11 years to that. Okay, that comes forward to September 11th, 2012. The next part says the 4th month. Okay, we're in September 11th, 2012. That's September, October, November, December, January 11th, I'm sorry. And then it says the 9th day. So now we're at January 11th, 2013. Add 9 days. That takes us to the inauguration date, January the 20th. Now, to the person that wants to argue and say, Nathan, very interesting, but are you serious? Really? Well, hold on to your seatbelts, folks. I'm going to share some things that are just going to be so incredible. The odds of this thing actually working out are just, I believe that they're mind-boggling. Just incredible. But what we have in verse 2 is inauguration day. And if what I really, really believe is true, then let's visit that. According to verse 2, on inauguration day, Babylon comes in to America. Same way. It gets through the wall. The walls were penetrated. The city of America will be penetrated by Babylon. But what does that mean? Well, look at verse 3. Then all the princes of the king of Babylon came in and sat at the middle gate. When we look at the scriptures, the Bible talks about, and Paul laid this out, he explained that there is the first heaven, which is what we see in the clouds, the rain, etc. There's the second heaven where the principalities dwell. And the principalities I'm referring to are the powers of darkness that have temporarily been given allowance to be on the earth. That's the second heaven, the spiritual realm. And then the third heaven is where God dwells. So the second heaven is the middle gate, in other words. Verse 3, the princes of Babylon, of the king of Babylon, came in and sat at the middle gate. When I released my first announcement about what I found here, I did not include the rest of verse 3. But I received an email from two individuals, and they said, Nathan, if you study the names of the princes in verse 3, it's incredible. And there are two people. If you're listening, I want to thank you. I don't want to say your names and reveal you if I don't have permission, but I just want to thank you for bringing that to my attention. So I started to research these names, and lo and behold, now, Joe and Doug, you've read the article, and you know where we're going to go with this, but I have the research in front of me of the names of these individuals, and this is what is so incredibly shocking. These names are names of demons, and they're names of demonic principalities that exist right now that are part of the index of satanic who's that are used in rituals even to this day, who have an assignment, who have a resume, who have a profile, and who have temperaments and attributes. And based on what we're looking at right here, if up to this point this all is true, and I believe that it is because we're seeing it happen, then here's the other part that needs to be included in the equation. These demonic entities are going to enter the White House on Inauguration Day. They are going to enter Washington, D.C. God is going to allow the hedge that he has, in the past, placed around America. When we say God bless America, well, in the invisible realm, that means God's hedge. It means his wall is around America. His hand covers America and protects her. And we've seen that happen for a long time. America has been protected. But God's removing that protection. There are breaches in the wall, and God is allowing Babylon, the spirits of Babylon, to now come in through the spiritual wall that once existed, and they are going to invade the White House. They're going to invade the administration on Inauguration Day, and things are going to happen. So I want to start covering the resume of these individuals, and I want to start with the first one that's mentioned. His name is Nergal-Sharezer, or Sharezer. When we look at that name, if we go to the original Hebrew, it tells us that Nergal-Sharezer are two different words. Sharezer means Prince of Fire. Now, right there, Prince of Fire would tell us it's a principality of fire. Now, Nergal has a very interesting resume. He's one of the chief deities of Assyria and Babylon who was worshipped in the Bible by the men of Cuth. Now, he was a deity, meaning he was a demonic entity. This is in the original Hebrew. But if we continue our research, if you, listener, if you have a chance and you want to further research this, just type it into Google, Nergal, Nergal. And by researching further, here's what we come up with. And in Wikipedia, it was a good reference point because there were many references and citations that brought his resume together. But let me just read some of the things that are mentioned here. Number one, the name Nergal refers to a deity in Babylon. Also, he is in part a solar deity, sometimes identified with Shamash, but only a representative of a certain phase of the sun. Now, he's a sun deity, or in other words, he's a sun god, but only in certain phases. And here's what's interesting. Nergal seems to represent the sun of noontime. And I guess that's when he exhibits his powers, or I guess that's where he may manifest some of the evil slime that he does over a people. But he's the god of noontime. Now, let's apply this to what's going to happen on January the 20th. It's very incredible. According to the 22nd Amendment of the Constitution, it says, I have it right here, I'll just go ahead and quote it, or I'll just say it from memory, that according to the 22nd Amendment, the outgoing president must be sworn in, must leave at noontime, and the incoming president must be sworn in at noontime on January the 20th, after the November election. So what does that mean? That means on January the 20th, which is going to happen on a Sunday in just a few days, at noon, Obama is going to be sworn in for his second term. Now let's look at this demonic creature, Nergal. His strength is manifested at noontime. Now, Joe and Doug, that's just one little point of incredible coincidence that I just find mind-boggling. This guy is going to exhibit strength on January the 20th. That's going to happen.
All right. Yeah, and by the way, folks, Nathan, I've heard accounts, and I did just verify this through Wikipedia, which I don't really like to quote, but Nergal is also depicted as the chief of Hell's secret police, and worked in the honorary service as a spy for Beelzebub. Just as an FYI, I don't know if that fits within your God of noontime, but I just felt that was an interesting take in terms of the demonology aspect.
You know what, Joe and Doug, that's one of the points that just jumped out when I was doing this research, what you just said, because that's going to play a significant role in the reanimation of Obama that's coming. But let me back up a little bit, and then I'm going to touch that. Okay.
All right.
It also says Nergal was a deity who presides over the netherworld, which is the underworld, and he stands at the head of a special pantheon assigned to the government of the dead. Another interesting point, government of the dead. This demon, this principality, presides over the government, the leadership, the hierarchy, the commands and the ranking of spirits of the dead. Now, I mentioned earlier that in the last few years, that Anubis statue, Anubis, however you want to pronounce it, was paraded across America as a ritualistic. It was a dark prophecy of America becoming the city of the dead. So that ritual took place, and now we have the next phase of the satanic plan for America. Now we have the principality coming in, and he's in charge of the government of the dead. It goes on. Nergal is also pictured as a lion. He's associated with Satan. Satan roars about as a roaring lion. And there are prophecies over and over in the Old Testament where God says he's going to release and loose the lion over the people as a punishment, as a part of his judgment. So now we have Nergal, the lion. It goes on. Nergal is also related to the planet Mars as a fiery god of destruction and war. Okay, another part of his resume. He likes destruction. He likes to get war started. Moving on, he's also the god of plague. And it is said that he was invoked during the plague years, during one of the reigns of, and there's a pharaoh mentioned there, it's a real long name, Suppiluliuma, when a disease was spread from Egypt. So according to ancient literature, he was associated with that. And also he's worshipped, and then getting to what you just mentioned. This part is bizarre and very, this is shocking, Doug. He's a deity of the desert, the god of fire, and according to two occultists who kept the annals of all the who's of demons who are used by the Satanists to conjure up and invoke demons. Now, I don't like to put a lot of trust in what a Satanist or an occultist would say, or a sorcerer, but they have their magic books, they have their magic writings and their sorcerer writings that they rely on to do their divinations, and their divinations actually work. Their divinations get results of satanic, evil, dark, slimy sludge when they do their invocations. So, according to two of these individuals, and this is found on Wikipedia, Colin DePlancy and Joanne Wire, they lived in the 16th and 17th century. They said what you just stated, Doug. Nergal is depicted as chief of Hell's secret police and an honorary spy in the service of Beelzebub. If this is true, according to everything I just said, now let me summarize them up because I have them right here. Number one, he's a principality of war, of pestilence, who presides over the netherworld. He's a sentry who watches over hell. He's pictured as a lion, identified with Satan. He stands at the head of the government of the dead. He's involved in government of the underworld, related to Mars. He's a god of fire, destruction, war. He's a plague of disease and death. And he's a chief of Hell's secret police and an honorary spy. Now, folks, ladies and gentlemen, here's where I'm very, very concerned. In the natural, a lot of people are concerned. They're mad. They're angry. They're spooked. They're becoming fearful and afraid in the natural and in the physical, and they're getting mad because they see what Obama is doing. They see what this administration is planning, and they're getting mad. But the anger cannot just stop in physical anger of intellect, of our brain, of our natural mind, because what we are witnessing is a spiritual event. And as I stated earlier when I was talking about the fourfold judgment, where God allows the release of evil, noisome beasts, or in other words, evil spirits, this invasion of evil is happening because America has chosen evil. This invasion of evil spirits is happening because America toyed with evil and entertained it and became tolerant of it and called it good. So, ladies and gentlemen, this entity, Nergal, is not fictional. He's not benign, and he appears to be one of the princes, the principalities of Hell's underworld, pandemonium, who's going to come in and turn America into the end-time spiritual mystery Babylon that we can read about in the book of Revelation. This is going to play a significant, profound role that's going to change America from Uncle Sam, the nice old man who has you over for milk and cookies, into Uncle Sam, the creepy guy, the pedophile, the murderer, the butcher, the executioner. This thing is so serious that we are facing princes of the underworld are going to spiritually invade the White House at noon on January the 20th. And based on this guy's resume, this is where it gets very concerning, Doug. This demon is going to influence U.S. leadership. He's going to influence U.S. policy. He's going to influence Obama, if Obama's the guy. And I always want to qualify it because, you know, what if? But at this point, it's Obama. He's going to influence Obama. He's going to influence Uncle Biden. He's going to influence Valerie Jarrett. And now already they seem very devilish and dark with their plans and their policies that they're already openly talking about. But it's going to get way worse. Hitler had Himmler. And Hitler surrounded himself with henchmen who were demon-possessed. In the same way, Obama is going to surround himself with different leaders who are going to be cabinet members, and each one of these leaders is going to be influenced by these demonic entities. In other words, the White House is going to become demon-possessed. And as we just touched, one of the specialties of Nurgle is the secret police, Doug. When we look at Hitler and how accomplished he was able to make his policy, in the natural mind, it bewilders us. It goes beyond us scratching our heads, and we have to say, how? How in the world could Germany fall for this thing? Well, here's how. Because Germany was also infected and taken over by demonic principalities. And the same thing happened in Stalin's Russia, Chairman Mao. When a country turns into a tyrannical, maniacal regime, they have the help of Satan. And Satan has been at this craft for thousands of years. He knows how to push the button. He knows how to influence. He knows how to let events stir and steer and change the mind of the people. And that's exactly what's happening right now in the United States of America. Doug, I'm looking at the clock. Do you want to summarize for the next hour?
Well, one thing I want to say, too, and this is biblical, there is nothing new under the sun. And, you know, as you pointed out very, very nicely that, you know, we've seen this happen in the past, this with Hitler and of course, Stalin and all of the communist leaders and all of the darkest days in recent global history. This has happened, and now we're seeing it about to take place, as I understand it, Mr. Leal, from your research, using the calendar using the calendar in biblical scripture, precisely Jeremiah chapter 39, verses 1 through 3, and 9/11 as a checkpoint. We're going to see here, in the framework that there's nothing new under the sun, we're going to see a reoccurrence of these days of darkness, this insidious inception of this darkness enter into the halls of Washington, as if we need more, but this is more ceremonial. And you lay this out, and folks, by the way, make sure you bookmark Nathan's website. That's watchmanscry.com, watchmanscry.com. In the articles section, you've got this laid out very, very nicely in the articles section that deals with the inauguration, and it's right there on the right-hand side. I believe it is in the article section. In fact, right under the notice of your guest appearance tonight on our show, and it's called Alert Warning Number 3: Obama's Inauguration. The portals will open. And that's dated 1/2/13. And read the alert, and that's all laid out there. So, folks, with that, you're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report on this, the 10th day of January 2013. Both Joe and I are just taking notes, multiple copious notes, from our very special guest, Mr. Nathan Leal. We want to thank him for joining us. Stay with us for the third and final hour. Time is going so quickly, I just can't believe it. Joe, it's
been a great show so far, very informative. Hit on a lot of points, and I'm sure it's going to end with a lot more great ones. So stay with us. We'll be right back. You're listening to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, this January 10th, 2013.
Hi folks, Doug Hagmann here. You might know me as the co-host from the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, or as a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM with George Norrie. If you're like me, you're tired and confused over today's headlines. You just don't know where to turn for accurate, concise information about really what's going on, what's truly going on in today's society. If you don't know where to turn for accurate, well-researched, and properly vetted news, I've got a suggestion. In fact, it's a requirement. Bookmark Canada Free Press. That's CanadaFreePress.com on the internet. It's just not for Canada. It's for news across the world. Judy McLeod, founding editor, has put together a vast array of talented writers like Kelly O'Connell, Daniel Greenfield, Dr. Eilena Johnson-Powell, a lot of guest columnists, very talented writers. Folks, that's Canada Free Press at CanadaFreePress.com. Now mobile friendly. Follow on Facebook, because without America, there is no free world.
Listeners to the Hagmann and Hagmann Report, have you gone to Granland Firearms of British Columbia, at least virtually? If not, why not? Do so now. Folks, go to HomelandSecurityUS.com. Click on the ad on the right-hand side of the page. It'll take you to Granland Firearms of British Columbia. It's a hunter's paradise. Have a look around. Look at their gun stock list, their photo gallery, and definitely sign into their guest book. And I'll tell you something. If you're fortunate enough to be up in the Pacific Northwest, up in British Columbia, they're located at 522 South Dogwood in beautiful Campbell River, British Columbia, Canada. It's the salmon capital of the world. They're located on the southwest side of Dogwood, just south of Muircroft Street, right across the street from the movie gallery. You got to stop in and see them if you're up there. They're open Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays from noon to 7, and also Saturdays 10 to 5 p.m. Pacific. They're closed on Sundays, Mondays, and Tuesdays. But if you're not up there, don't let that stop you. Go to GranlandFirearms.com. Check out, you know what, folks? Check out their book, Carl Granland's book. I got to tell you, it's Trade Beyond the River, second edition. It's about cougar hunting on Vancouver Island. It's a book that you'll be proud to own, proud to have, and some of the best photos, I'll tell you, in terms of their backsplashes of their website. But if you're looking for weapons, firearm courses, hunting supplies, camping supplies, you can't find a better place if you're in Canada. They specialize in firearms, including rifles, shotguns, black powder rifles, and so on. That's Granland Firearms. Go to HomelandSecurityUS.com, click on the icon for GranlandFirearms.com, and tell them the Hagmann and the Hagmann Report sent you.
Survival of the fittest. In any and all situations, survival is your number one priority. That requires being tough and thinking smart. And the folks at Freeze Dry Guy are going to help you do just that. They have the long-range patrol ration entrees, what they call the Brick Pack. When you're in survival mode, it is absolutely the best item for your survival pack or bug-out bag. You can go farther, faster, and carry more food with the LRP cold weather ration entrees. Not only do these long-lasting, durable entrees help sustain you or your family through the harshest environment or situation, they are by far the most delicious of their kind. No contest. With a variety of tasty entrees, you can't beat the LRP Brick Packs. Let Freeze Dry Guy help you in your survival situations. Go to freezedryguy.com. That's freezedryguy.com, or call 866-404-3663. That's 866-404-FOOD.
Doug Hagmann. One guy that doesn't need a bullhorn to get your attention.
You want answers. I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to hour number 3 of this Thursday, January 10th edition of the Hagmann and Hagmann Report. We're joined by a very special guest, Nathan Liao. Go to his website at watchmanscry.com. I got some breaking news here before we get back into what we were talking about the inauguration. Louis DiGilio pulls out of inauguration over anti-gay comments. An evangelical pastor from Atlanta announced Thursday he would not give the benediction at President Obama's swearing-in ceremony after a sermon he gave on homosexuality in the mid-1990s resurfaced earlier this week. In that sermon, he said he called for Christians to firmly respond to the aggressive agenda of some in the gay community and warned that widespread gay marriage would run the risk of absolutely undermining the whole order of our society. In a statement, he said that his participation would be dwarfed by those seeking to make their agenda the focal point of the inauguration. Very interesting.
Interesting, especially in the backdrop of what we're talking about here, and that is the inauguration of Barack Hussein Obama. Mr. Leal, welcome back to the program. Glad to have you, and you're getting into some pretty heavy stuff about the inauguration, about how the spirit of the dark is infiltrating, or has infiltrated, but is certainly ceremoniously coming to the inauguration. Go ahead and continue.
Okay. As it states in Jeremiah chapter 39, verse 1 through 3, we can read the account of Jerusalem under siege, invaded, penetrated, and then the princes of Babylon went into Jerusalem. And in the same way, that's going to happen to America. The princes mentioned in verse 3 are actual demonic entities. If someone's listening in at the top of this hour and doesn't have the background, these things are stated on my website in the alert part 3. But continuing on, Nurgle, this creature that is going to come in on the 20th, has a very long resume, and he doesn't just do one thing, but the translation of all of these things that are coming together is that he's going to have a huge, huge significant role in ushering in, and this thing is going to be the stuff of nightmares, ladies and gentlemen, a new tide of secret police tyranny into America. The key thing to always keep in mind is that this is a spiritual event. It's a spiritual invasion. And sadly, it could have been stopped if enough people would have cried out to God and repented, but it didn't happen. So it's going to continue. It's not going to be stopped. So I want to just make a quick comment, because according to how much time we have at the end of the program, I'm going to touch base on what we need to do. How do we prepare for this? But we're not going to stop the portal from opening. The gates of hell are going to be allowed to come in and infiltrate America and the world. Now, to the person that says, this messes with my theology, Nathan, I'm having a hard time, well, here's the way to look at it that might help you if you're struggling with what I'm saying. When we look at the book of Revelation, we see the end-time narrative. We see what's going to happen at the very end of time before Jesus returns. It's going to be horrible. We see in Revelation chapter 9, the bottomless pit is open, the keys are given to an angel, and demons pour out of it. We see another account of angels who are bound at the river Euphrates, and they are loosed. Those are the accounts that are mentioned in Revelation. How many other accounts are going to also take place that are not mentioned? And when we look at the events in Revelation, we can read that the end-time one-world government, New World Order beast empire will temporarily be given the authority to overcome the saints. And many saints are going to, unfortunately, end up in heaven through this time period. They're going to end up in heaven through a variety of ways. They're going to be mistreated. They're going to be persecuted. They'll be martyrs. And when we read these things, then we have to admit to ourselves that evil is running rampant on the earth during this time, in the end of days. And God is allowing it to happen. It says Satan was on the earth, and woe unto the earth because he only had a short time. God is going to allow it. So when we place that into the frame of mind, and then when we go backwards, then we need to ask the question, if we are as late on the timeline as I suspect, as many listeners are suspecting, as many people are suspecting, then we have to also visit that if we're late in the hour, then that means the attack of evil sludge is going to be coming to the earth. It means that
some place called Mystery Babylon, some kingdom, some empire, some presence is going to have a way on the earth. It's called Mystery Babylon, and according to Revelation, it said it's the hold and the dwelling place and the prison of demons, of evil spirits. Babylon's going to be the location of evil. So at some point, and I believe the majority of the listeners could agree that America seems to fit the role of Babylon. If that's the case, when did America change into this thing? When did it turn into Mr. Hyde? When did it reanimate itself into a dark, backslidden infidel? Well, it's happening right now, ladies and gentlemen. And what I'm talking about, as far as the inauguration period, is a very significant part of that timeline where America is going to turn into these horrible things. Now, getting back to Nergal, when he comes into the White House, according to the resume and according to what he is able to do, he's going to infect the leadership of America into a new chapter where the Constitution no longer exists. The Constitution will be stepped on, walked on, and Obama's going to tear it up and make communistic cigars out of it. It's going to be cruel. And as American citizens witness this thing, there's going to be a lot of confusion, anger. There's going to be a lot of opinions. And right now we're seeing Americans are getting the feeling, even people who aren't awake, they're noticing. All you have to do is go to a gun store, a sporting goods store, turn on the TV, turn on the news, get on Drudge. A lot of people are wondering what is going to happen, what is going on, what's going to be the end result, how is this going to play out, what is my role, what do I do? A lot of people have that question, Doug, and when I finish, I'm going to throw out some suggestions of what people can do. But moving quickly on, we get to the second creature mentioned in verse 3, and his name is Samgar Nebo. Now, Samgar Nebo, we can break that name up. That's Jeremiah 39:3, if you have your Bible still. Samgar Nebo is two words. It's Samgar and Nebo. Samgar means sword of, the sword of. Nebo comes from the name Nebu. Nebu was one of the false Babylonian gods that was worshipped in Babylon. Now, as I mentioned earlier on this program, we touched on the unholy trinity of Nimrod, his wife Semiramis, and their son Tammuz. That unholy trinity has been passed down throughout the world. That teaching has been spread throughout the world. The names have been changed, but it's the same thing. The son of the unholy trinity, his name is Tammuz. As his name is transferred throughout the world, his name becomes Nebu. It becomes Horus, Ninus, and then Nebo. So Nebo is really the same thing as the old-fashioned son of the unholy trinity. He's Nimrod's son, Tammuz. So Nebo is part of that three-part slime of false religion from Babylon. That's who Nebo is. Now, this creature who's going to come in, his name means the sword of Nebo, Nebo's sword. Now, Nebo's name also means that he was a scribe and he was the keeper of the records of all the individuals of the earth. This is what Babylon believed. And Nebo was able to increase or diminish, according to his own will, however he felt, the length of a human life. So people feared Nebo. Now, how interesting is it that his resume, Nebo, is the scribe? He's the recording. When we compare that to the Holy Trinity, we have Father, Son, Holy Spirit. The Son is the Word of God. So Nebo is a counterfeit of Jesus. He's the son of the false God. I'm saying that for this reason. When this creature comes in to the White House on January the 20th, I am concerned, and I am asking the question, is it possible that this demonic creature could influence those in Washington? Obama, could he put his ectoplasmic sludge of influence and make people in the administration believe that they are the son of the Creator, or in other words, the Son of God, or in other words, the Messiah? That's a very important question I'm throwing out. There's a dark prophecy about Marduk, who is the Baal portion of the unholy trinity, the Nimrod portion, Marduk was one of the names that it evolved into. The Assyrians had in their writings that there's a prophecy that Marduk, or Baal, is going to return at some point to be the Messiah king and return to Babylon. Now, that's in the annals of antiquities. I just bring it up because I find it interesting, but I have to also ask this question. What if? What if the way that many people are expecting Bible prophecy to play out happens in a different way? And that's one of the things that I try to stress on my programs, and that is this. We have to be discerning and open-minded enough to say that if God is going to throw a curveball in end-time prophecy, we have to consider that it's possible. Because if we do not consider it, then a lot of Christians are going to be looking for the wrong sign. They're going to be looking for the evil end-time villain from a different place. But what if God throws us a curveball? That's why I just want to leave that out there. What if the Sword of Nebo, this Samgar Nebo guy, influences Obama and makes him think that he's a Messiah? Now, let's move on from there. The next three names. Now, by the way, if you have the Bible in front of you, Doug, do you see how Nergal is mentioned twice? Is that for emphasis? Is that a double portion of him? I don't know. But he's written down twice in verse 3. I don't know why. It's the same word. But moving on past Nergal, we have Sarsakim, Rabsaris, and Rabmag. Now, these names are not the names of individuals. They're instead the titles. They appear to be titles of authority. So Sarsakim has several possible meanings. He possibly means the prince of the eunuchs, or the overseer of the dark slaves, or the black slaves, or the overseer of mercenary troops. Now, let's visit that one. Sarsakim is coming in on January the 20th, but he's not coming alone because it says he's the overseer of troops or dark slaves, meaning that there are other levels and ranking lower entities that he's going to be in charge of, and he's bringing them into the White House with him. And I'm pretty sure that there's going to be enough of these evil entities to go around the table of the Obama administration, of the cabinet officials, of the heads of departments, of those that are in power, of those that are in charge of very high authority. It's not just going to be Obama that's going to be influenced. This sludge is going to come in and influence all of the administration. The next name is Rob Saris. He's the chief. He seems to be the chief of lesser demonic officers. He's the chief of officers, which means he also, well, what's an officer? Well, they're also the generals and the captains and the lieutenants in the satanic world that he's in charge of. So what is he going to tell them to do? And then finally we have Rabmag, who is the chief sorcerer and magician, which tells us that a spirit of divination, of deception, of sorcery and magic is also going to infiltrate the White House. And how fitting is it that it tells us in the book of Revelation that the end-time one-world government is going to deceive the world with signs and deceptive wonders. So what's in store for that? What are they going to do? How are they going to deceive the world? Are they going to use some technical hologram, or is it going to be a display of actual spiritual visible things happening? Is there going to be a fake alien invasion? I'm just throwing things out because I don't know what they have up their sleeve. But now we have hell's underworld come into the White House, and they have an agenda. And that agenda is to take America and turn America into the fallen nation of destruction and perdition. Now, while we can argue and wonder and have a brainstorm about how it's all going to play out, the bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, the bottom line, Joe and Doug, is that based on everything I just presented here, it appears that America is in deep trouble. It appears that America is going to be facing something that is nightmarish, that would have to be a Hollywood production that we could never make up. This thing is so dark that it's coming, and I am very, very concerned that as it happens, now, first of all, I don't expect to see these demons announce themselves. They're not going to come out on CNN and interview with Anderson Cooper. and say, yeah, this is what we're doing. We won't know who they are. We won't. The natural mind is not going to think about them. The natural mind is not going to see them, because when we look at previous history, how many people, when they talk about Hitler being the devil, also includes the demons that were around him? Not many. And we could say the same thing for other regimes. So in the natural, it's not going to be apparent. But to the discerning ones that are concerned about what time it is, it needs to be a concern, because, as I mentioned, these last three names that I mentioned are the chiefs. They're the ones in charge. They're the overseers over lesser demons. What this tells me is that the lesser demons are also going to influence the rest of America. They're going to be loosed and go to all 50 states. They're going to affect the leadership of governors, the state houses, the state senates across America, and they're going to have one thing in mind: deceptive policy that's going to take over America and destroy the freedoms, because they need America to be a tyrannical dictatorship in order for the next phase of their plan to occur. And what this means is it's going to be a battle. There is going to be resistance. There will be people in the natural that will say no. So the big question that needs to be asked as the dark tides of evil arrive, as these portals are open, is how do we deal with this? Because, ladies and gentlemen, I know they want to take away our guns. I know they are talking about it. But how many guns can shoot these creatures? How many AR-15s can really impact these creatures? How many guns can hold them off from your driveway if they decide to walk up your driveway or to float over your house and enter into one of the members of your family? How is a gun going to protect you from that? And I want to shift into that very thing, Doug and Joe. How do the people of God deal with this? What are they supposed to do? Now, I also want to say this. Go ahead.
Nathan, okay, before you go on, and folks, I just want to just kind of not recap, but reinforce, I suppose, what Mr. Leal is talking about here, and I think this is really important. As it is above, so it is below, and we have to look at what we're facing here today with what's going on different planes, because we know there are different dimensions, if you will, different physical dimensions, and there's this interface. The darkness we are seeing is almost like the ripping of a veil, in my view. And I'm just trying to explain this to the listeners that I know that I relate to almost on a daily basis. There's this ripping of the veil that will allow this darkness to enter, or the unseen enter into the seen world. And this is what Mr. Leal, I believe, is talking about. And it's interesting when you look at the current events through the prism of biblical scripture, and you look at Jeremiah 39, as Mr. Leal is talking about, which this program is centered around. You're talking about entities coming into our country, specifically into the power structure, in the embodiment of these entities, into the power structure, not just into Obama, but into all aspects of his cabinet, his people that are around him. And it's interesting, Nathan. I find this extremely interesting too. The dates where many people have said, and it's well known that 9/11 was the day that changed the history of America as well as the world. So, using that as a checkpoint, and then Jeremiah 39 verses 1 through 3, identifying the demonic principalities there, you've woven this great story, or not story, but this great account of how this will take place, of these entities coming in. And I find it interesting too, dealing with my research with the Illuminati, for example, and the pagan, ritualistic, paganistic people that have found their way into America. They worship. I mean, Veneration Day falls on a Sunday, for example. To me, that's significant. The day of the week, and the numerology associated with from 9/11 to inauguration, using the Gregorian calendar, how the dates play out. It's no accident. Everything you're talking about here for those with eyes to see, the spiritual discernment can see that there will indeed, just as the world changed on 9/11, so will the power structure change on Inauguration Day. I don't know if I did any service to you, Mr. Leal, but that's kind of how I see it playing out here, and that's why this is so important. In what you're about to speak of, and you're about to speak to and we're seeing this because today you go to a gun store, you can't find a weapon, a semi-automatic weapon or something to defend yourself, folks. If you can't see what's going on here, if you cannot feel the undercurrent of evil, and if you don't know that we're about to enter into one of the most turbulent times in American history, then go back to sleep, because I'll tell you something. But the fact is, this is more of a spiritual problem than it is. Well, it's a spiritual problem for sure, but it's manifesting itself in the real world today. But Mr. Leal, go ahead. I just wanted to interject that because I know some listeners are I just know some listeners, and I know how they think, and through the dialogue I've had with them, so I just wanted to reaffirm that.
Yeah, thank you for that summary, and I want to add this. On the 20th is the beginning. The plan to demolish America. When we look at how Jerusalem was demolished, that's when they showed up. They penetrated the wall on that day, but it took a while for them to dismantle the city, to burn the city, to tear down the walls. And this thing is going to happen in phases. There's another huge event that is going to be coming in the next month, and I don't want to digress and derail this program, but there's more coming, and maybe we can do another program about it, because after the inauguration, that's going to be another milestone of something that's coming that I've also found in the scriptures. But the executive summary, exactly as you put it, has to do with the spiritual. Now, I want to address the question that many people are wondering about, and there are several questions. Number one, what do we do? Nathan, if what you're saying is true, what do we do? What do I do? Yeah, the next question is, how is this going to happen? What are the events that are going to take place to make this happen? How is it going to transpire? The next question that people are wondering is, what plans must I be making right now? Should I be making plans? The next thing is the gun grab going to come? Is the Second Amendment going to be butchered? And I know a lot of people, even right now, Doug and Joe, are wondering, how do I respond to the result, to the new dictatorship? Do I resist? Do I shush myself? Do I tell everybody not to talk about it? Do I go hide? Let me use this term for those listening, do I go sell my swords? Do I get rid of all of my swords so that I don't get in trouble? And from the spiritual perspective, this is what is going to be happening. As God showed me several years ago, liberty is going to be decapitated, and he's the one that's going to allow it, and he's the one that's ushering it in, because it's his justice. So if it is God's will that this happens, well, actually, let me rephrase it. It's not his will that it happens, but if it is God that is allowing it, how far, as an American Christian, Bible-believing, freedom-thinking American, how far do I go? What role do I have as a believer? What result does God wish to see in my life, in his people? Am I allowed to resist? Am I allowed to say, I don't think so? Am I allowed to be a part of the insurgency if it happens? Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to see a civil war. Let me just say it. There will be bloodshed. Satan wants bloodshed. These demonic creatures that are coming in always love to see bloodshed, because blood is what they love to see on their sacrifice to themselves. They love to see the shedding of blood. It fuels them. It gives them strength. It fuels their pride. So if bloodshed's going to happen, what is a Christian supposed to do? Do they take part in it? Where do they draw the line? You see, ladies and gentlemen, I know that a lot of you are thinking these. I've gone to different blogs. I'm hearing people talk about it, and I am sensing that a lot of people are visibly becoming fearful. They're visibly becoming afraid and scared. One side of their mind is tugging, I have to be Paul Revere, and I have to be part of Paul Revere's associates. The other part is tugging, but I don't want to mess it up. I don't want to lose my house. I don't want to cause an IRS audit. I don't want to have them banging down my door. I don't this and that. There's all of these things that people are afraid of. So what are people supposed to do? And if God loves us, why is he allowing this to happen? Now, again, one of the most important things that needs to be said, and I've been saying this frequently, and this part needs to be understood. When we look at the false religion of Babylon that existed from the beginning of time, and we saw that Satan used Nimrod and his wife. He failed with Adam and Eve, but Eve didn't want to become a god. She stumbled, but she didn't continue any false teachings about that were spread throughout the world. But Nimrod and his wife did. So Satan accomplished what he couldn't accomplish with Adam and Eve through Nimrod and his wife and their son. That was the beginning of the false religion that has spread throughout the world. And Babylon was the key city that had a role in this. When we go forward to the people of Israel and the children of Israel struggling with the false religion, again, it was Babylon. When God punished them, he used Babylon to do it, the physical Babylon. When physical Babylon was used to punish the people of God, the end result was eventually the people of God started crying out to God. They repented, but many of them died. Most of them died. They were carried off to captivity. And it was a sad end for a lot of people, but God saved a remnant out of them. Now, when we come forward to the end of Scripture, isn't it interesting that once again, during the tribulation period, it's going to be Mystery Babylon. It's going to slime the earth. Here. I'm sorry? Are you there, Doug?
Hello.
Yeah. Are you there?
Yeah, sorry. The Skype cut out on us.
And what
right in a point where you were saying something that was going to be important, and it cut right out.
Unbelievable, Mr. Leal. I got to tell you, folks, if you don't believe for one moment that look, I know things happen. I know mechanical things happen and computer things happen, but never to the extent that we're experiencing. We've been under our website's been under attack. We've been under attack, and I want you to pray not only for us, if you know, we humbly ask that, but for Mr. Leal, you know, because we are as watchmen, we are facing some pretty dangerous times, and
this happens just about every time we have an important person on, or saying people who are saying important things that are changing people's lives and their spirituality.
What was the last thing you heard me say?
You were talking about what was going to happen. There was going to be a civil war, and what role should Christians play in it? And you started to explain. It was about the first sentence, and it cut out.
Yeah. So pick it up from there. What do we as Christians have to do, or what should we do as we face the onset of this bloody civil war, the prospect of this bloody civil war?
Did you hear me ask the questions? What do we do? What's going to happen? And what plans do we need to do? Did you hear me?
And that's where the plug was pulled.
And we heard you say how they love the blood. The darkness loves the bloodshed.
And that's it.
Okay. Bottom line, the gun grab is going to come. The Second Amendment is going to be butchered, and as well as other portions of the Constitution. And a lot of people are wondering what to do. They're wondering if they should resist. Should they stay quiet? Should they hide? Should they sell their swords? Did you hear me say that?
Yes. Yeah. And that's right about where it kind of went up.
Okay. People are wondering why God would allow this to happen. What good can come out of this? And this is the key point that needs to be understood. And then I started talking about Babylon. Did you catch that part?
No, we did not.
Okay. All right.
So yeah, bring us up to speed here.
Okay. It's very important to have the perspective of Babylon. When we look at ancient Babylon, when Nimrod and his wife and their sons started the false religion of Baal worship, it was Babylon that did it, and it got exported throughout the whole world. And then when we saw the children of Israel struggle with the false religions, it was the religion from Babylon. And then when God said, I'm going to punish you, Israel, if Babylon's what you want, Babylon's what you're going to get. So God allowed physical Babylon to invade Israel. Now, from that point on, how interesting is it that God used Babylon? And sadly, when we read the account of Jeremiah and Lamentations, most of the people died. They died a very sad death. They saw their freedoms destroyed because Babylon attacked them. But God did save a remnant of his people. Now, when we move forward to the end of time, we see in the book of Revelation, once again, Babylon, Mystery Babylon, is going to play a huge role over the earth. Now, why would God allow that? That's the question. And we can read that in Revelation, Babylon is going to be a very deceptive thing in Revelation. Interesting, ladies and gentlemen? It's interesting that the lady, the mystery religion that we see in Revelation, is going to play a role to deceive the people of earth. And the question must be raised, why would God do that? Well, here's why. Because after the tribulation period, Jesus is going to return, and he's going to set things straight. He's going to put the nations under his feet, and he's going to bring the true religion, if you will, the true worship. He's going to show us the real way of his law, the real way of his ways, of his principles. But in order to do that, he has to destroy the false way, the false religions. Now, in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 51, there's an interesting passage that a lot of people probably don't think about, and I want to share it right now. Jeremiah 51, verse 33. For the person that says, Nathan, why? This is horrific. What you're telling us is nightmarish. Why would God allow this? Here's why, folks. Because Jesus is coming back for a church and a bride that is spotless, that has no wrinkles, and that has been refined. How does God refine, though? Isn't it interesting that right now the evangelicals sing the song, I'll Fly Away, and they say we could get raptured at any time. But if we really were to be honest with ourselves, is the church refined right now? Doug, is it refined? How much nonsense is taking place in the church? It's
if
not.
I can invoke I won't even make a joke by invoking the Clinton, what is the meaning of is, but go ahead.
Oh, okay, so in verse 33, thus says the Lord God of hosts, the God of Israel, the daughter of Babylon is like a threshing floor when it is time to thresh her. So what that means is God is going to use Babylon to thresh his people. And the threshing floor has an analogy of the wheat that was thrown into the air to allow the wind to take the chaff away so that the farmer, the sower, the harvester would have the good stuff left. But you need to thresh the wheat. And that's a principle that cannot be forgotten. God is going to thresh his church, meaning that we as members of the church are going to have to be shaken. And Babylon is going to be used, the spirit of Babylon, these demonic entities that are going to influence Obama and the administration and the regimes of the world, because this thing's going to spread throughout the whole world. It's going to be used for the people to discover where they are in God. It's going to be used for the people to discover new faith in God. It's going to be used by God to help the people forsake the struggles they've been having. There's a lot of people that are in bondage right now that want rescue. There are Christians that struggle with things, and they're secret, closet-type sins, and they say to themselves, they lament and they grieve, they go to God and say, God, I wish I could have deliverance from that, and they struggle for years and years, and they never get victory. Well, guess what, folks? What is coming is going to bring victory over those struggles, because those struggles are going to fall off many of the people, and people aren't going to even care about those things, because there's going to be more priorities that are going to be on the platter. And God is going to allow Babylon as a threshing floor, because after God is finished using Babylon to refine his people, look what the end of verse 33 says. Yet in a little while the time of her harvest will come. What that means is the church will be ready. The fields will be white with harvest. Jesus will be the harvester who's going to come for a bride that is ready. So the things that are happening to many people right now, and in the natural, right now you have listeners, Doug and Joe, who are going through horrible financial hardship. They've lost their houses, they've lost their jobs, they've lost a lot of their comforts. They're asking why. They think God's mad at them. They're struggling with their faith. But listener, I want you to know something. God is allowing these things to happen to you because he loves you. He does this to everyone that he loves. He has to. And so the good news about all of this is that if God does this because he loves us, well, then he must have a good plan for you. In the book of Revelation chapter 3, the church of Laodicea, the lukewarm church that struggles, Jesus calls them on it. He says that you're lukewarm, you're not hot or cold. But those that I love, I discipline, I chasten. So Jesus is really saying, the lukewarm church, I love you, but I need to discipline you. And you need to go through the fire to find the gold. And that's what he tells them to do. He says, redeem from me gold purchased in the fire. What that means is the trials that need to happen to purchase are going to be allowed to occur to the people of God. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you have stayed up late at night with tears in your eyes and you're wondering why, and some of you think that God doesn't care, he cares now more than ever. That's why this is happening. And I want to let you know that God is going to see you through, and he's going to teach you faith and teach you trust that you have never had before. Now, with that said, I also have to mention this. Since these events cannot be stopped, can they be postponed or slowed down? That's another question. If enough people got together and said, we bind the powers of Satan, and they did that faith prayer, the warfare prayer against the portals, could it stop it? Is it possible? Well, since this is part of God's judgment, the formula for stopping or slowing down or delaying the judgment is the same formula that it's always been. And it is not making a proclamation against the invading forces, because that's taking our will and placing it, instead of committing to God and submitting to him and humbling ourselves to him and repenting and having a spiritual renewal. If enough people did that, then possibly it could be slowed down or postponed. But, folks, I'm not sure that's going to happen, because it's just days away, and I don't see that taking place. So if it's not going to be slowed down, if it does slow down, praise God, I'll be happy, Joe and Doug and listeners. But since I don't think it's going to be slowed down, then here's the other question that needs to be addressed. Will the Rambo resistors out there humble themselves and call on God? Will the patriots who are angry about this, will those who went to the Tea Party meetings, who are members of the NRA, will they humble themselves and cry out to God? Will the corporate group of freedom lovers cry out to God? That's the question, ladies and gentlemen. And if the question is no, then here's what's going to happen. A civil war is coming. There's going to be bloodshed, and a lot of the well-meaning people I just mentioned, the good American patriots, ladies and gentlemen, there are going to be the stories of the fallen, and it's going to be said. There will be armed resistance. Ladies and gentlemen, it's going to get ugly. It's going to be bloody. And the stories are going to be told about the valiant, brave ones. But when we look at the story, the biography, the insert into history is going to be made about those who said no. So the question that many people are wondering is this: Nathan, should I say no? Do I sell my sword? Do I stand up to them? I am hearing reports that there's going to be a grab. They're going to go door to door. What do I do? Do I say no? Do I go underground? You see, folks, we're all thinking about these things. But number one, let me just say this. To everyone that is listening, it is very, very important right now to have a family meeting. Husbands and wives, you need to be having a meeting with your wife, your husband, your kids, and you need to be asking the question, what do we do? Because whatever you decide to do needs to be made with prayer and with the leading of the Holy Spirit. But this also needs to be included. There's going to be a cost to what you do. Because if you say no, and if you become part of the Ted Nugent crowd, there's going to be a cost. If you say no, and if you say, I'm going to stay a Christian, but I'm not going to turn them in, or we're not going to turn in our swords, there's going to be a cost. If you do turn in your cost and you lay down and you comply, there's going to be a cost. And what is the cost going to be? That's the thing that we all need to be willing to face. Because the cost that Joe, Doug, what we're talking about right here is some of us are possibly going to be killed. Some of us are going to be arrested in the dead of night. They're going to bang open, bust our doors down, and they're going to take us. Some of us are going to end up in FEMA camps. Let's just say the truth. Nathan Liao is saying it. This is what needs to be considered. Are you willing to do that? Or are you going to be one of those that say, well, Nathan, if that's what's going to happen, I'll just go to heaven early. That's fine with me. And I've heard people tell me that. Doug, I've spoken to women that say, Nathan, if it comes to that, I'll let them send me to heaven. That's okay. I've had a good life. When we're in heaven, we're going to sit.
But what's the answer? Okay, I mean, as a Christian, as a father, as a grandfather, as a patriot for the Constitution, for the idea of the original America, as all of those, these don't have to be mutually exclusive, do they? I mean, I could say, look, as a Christian, I am not going to allow these demonic forces to overtake my family. I'm going to fight.
Exactly. Let me cover those real quick, okay?
Okay,
but
all right.
This needs to be on the table, though. It's easy to say something that sounds brave and Rambo-like, but when the reality hits, what it also is going to include is an aftermath. There is always going to be an aftermath. So are we willing to pay the price of the aftermath? Yes, we're Americans. Yes, we need to stand up for the Constitution, but we need to understand there's going to be an aftermath. Now, let me throw this out. Based on what I'm observing right now, I am already seeing the discussion and the dialogue from some of the blue states who voted for Obama that are saying they're going for it. There's going to be a gun grab. They're done. It's going to happen. This is my advice right now. First of all, I believe that based on what I'm observing, it's going to be a civil war of blue states against red states. The red states are populated with more people that say, I don't think so. And the blue states are surrounded by people that will turn you in. They're populated by your neighbors that will call Homeland Security if they even know that you have a gun after they become illegal. So one form of advice that I would say is pray right now, get leading from the Holy Spirit. But here's a radical thing. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm about to say something radical. If you live in a blue liberal state, and if God gives you the permission, get out now. Pack up now. Quit your job. Drain your retirement fund. Get out now because you're going to be outnumbered and move to a red state. Doug, what is there to think about on this one? If you're not leaving the country, at least relocate to some of the red states. Now, which red state do I go to? Well, that's going to take research. Which red states will hold out the longest? Possibly. Which ones? Well, we can look at the mountain region, the Rocky Mountain region. I can think of Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, maybe some other ones. But that's probably going to be some of the places that hold out the longest. But a civil war is coming, and based on what side of the line you were on, that's where you're going to weather it out. That's where you're going to be. I know these things are radical, but we only have a few weeks left or even months left. So that needs to be addressed. Next, we also have to do this. Get assembled with like-minded people. Nathan, how do I find them? Here's how. You can find out now who you can trust by asking this question. Start meeting with the friends and your families, your coworkers. Ask them the questions. What do you think you're going to do? If there's a gun grab, what will you do? If the Second Amendment goes away, is it going to matter to you? Will you comply? Start asking your friends that question. Based on what they said, you'll know if they'll turn you in. You'll know if you can trust them. And after that, you need to be very, very careful. Possibly some of you, if the gun grab comes, it's going to be illegal to own one, so maybe you need to relocate your swords if you're keeping them. But if you're in a blue state, you're going to have a hard time getting this, and you're going to be in trouble the minute you use it. So, see, these are the things we have to think about. Also, are you willing to walk through that door of repentance? Number one, we need to repent. We need to get our house in order. We need to have God's protection over his children. We need to get a hold of our relationship with God in ways that we never had, because when this demonic sludge is loosened across America, we need to get a hold of an authority, a supernatural authority in God that we know how to use. We need to have a command of the Scriptures that we can use. We have to have had some solemn assemblies with our friends or loved ones to ask God and plead with him to protect our property. You need to walk around your property. There needs to be spiritual warfare. This has to be done now, folks. You can't wait. We have to learn about the armor of God, Ephesians chapter 6. Study it. Learn it. The armor of God, the fiery darts. Because in the midst of this darkness, we can still stand. Paul says in Ephesians 6, be strong in the Lord and in the power. Key words, folks. Power of his might. How do we do that? Paul then mentions the armor. And then after he mentions the armor in Ephesians 6, he says, praying always, therefore, in the Spirit. Pray, pray, pray. Pray for God's help. And then Paul says, and pray for the utterance, for the words to say, to be able to share about the mysteries of God, the gospel. This is heavy-duty homework, ladies and gentlemen. Also, God cannot forgive you if you're bitter at other people. So we need to renew relationships with family members, with friends. We need to be reconciled with our friends. Also, one of the biggest attacks that we're going to see is Satan is going to be throwing fear, confusion, anger, and human thinking, human counsel on you. So we have to learn to overcome. The only way to learn to overcome, well, Revelation tells us, they overcame how? By the blood of the Lamb and the Word. The Word is the Bible. We need to learn the Scriptures. Folks, if you are a halfway Christian, a closet Christian, a lay-down Christian, you're not going to make it. Let me just say plain and simple. You will not make it. Now, do we sell our sword? Jesus said, sell your coat and buy a sword. The disciple said, God, look, Jesus, there's a sword. Jesus said, that's good. That's okay. That's enough. So be wise with your sword. Do not be foolish. Do not say too much. It is our obligation to protect the innocent. The Bible says in Ecclesiastes, whatever your hand finds to do it with all of your might. That means it's your job to protect your family. It's your job to represent Jesus. It's your job to stop evil. If the zombies are coming down your driveway, it is your job to stop them. And when you stop them, you do it with all your might, and you do what you're supposed to do. It says in the New Testament, to him who knows what to do and who does not do it, to him it is sin. So not doing something falls under the sin of omission. Now, to some of you that are listening, you might say, Nathan, to me, defending the Constitution is the right thing to do. So here's the situation, Doug. Every person listening needs to figure out and decide right now what they're going to do, and they need to be committed to it. I'm not going to tell someone they can't be a part of the resistance, because the resistance is going to happen. However, the resistance will have a cost, because Revelation tells us that whoever uses their sword is going to die by the sword. Period. Also, we have to keep the correct perspective. When do you use your sword and when do you run? When do you depend on the protection of God that's supernatural? When do you ask him to turn you invisible? There's a lot. This thing is very complex. But I want to say this. If you are not led to get rid of your sword, then start praying and start seeking the wisdom of how to deal with this thing. Because, Doug, it is not simple to talk about. This thing is going down. This is historic. It is serious. And I'm sure I have a lot of people thinking right now, but the dialogue has to happen now.
Oh, yes. You
spoke
cover
fast, but I spoke quickly because I was trying to get this all in so that you can make some comments.
No, you did a fine job, and this is one of the issues, Mr. Leal, that we grapple with almost on a daily, nightly basis. Is, my son and I have spirited discussions. We have not opposing views, but not necessarily the same views. They're parallel, but not necessarily the same. About fighting and what we do, what each of us is going to do, and just by our own personal experiences and by listening to others, families are divided. Brothers and sisters and wives and husbands and neighbors they're divided like never before in history, as far as I can remember. And I'm 50-something years old, and so what you're mentioning is so important. And what you're saying, however, is it's going to be, number one, an individual decision based on prayer and guidance from the Holy Spirit. That's what you're saying. Yeah. Okay. All right. And I'm of the opinion that we all have different positions to occupy and different positions that we must play. That's so the answer is not going to be the same for everyone listening to this. That's my view. In prayer, we have to pray for that guidance, and that guidance is going to end up. We're not going to have the same positions to play. But very well said. Now, how soon? And this is a question. I've got multiple questions, multiple listeners from three different countries now. The same question: how soon after January 20th, 2013, do you see all of this taking place? All of this manifest in front of us.
There is a plan taking place right now that is not on the news. Obama has been doing a plan behind closed doors. He has started this since 2010, and the end result of this plan, as I'm reading it, is that it's going to spread the arm of the end-time Babylon beast worldwide. It has to do with the Global Development Policy, his Global Development Committee that he just had nominated by executive order, and this policy has three pillars that have to do with spreading the Copenhagen, the Green Earth thing. It's going to spread national security objectives. It's going to spread the control of food worldwide. And he just announced the nominations. It's on his website on December 21st, of all things, of the first 9. And the people on his committee are all CFR members. They're Rhodes Scholars. This plan is going to get the ball rolling worldwide. It's going to spread and make it hard for all nations to be disarmed. It's going to have rules in order to get aid from America. They're going to word it in order to get medical help, any kind of benefits. They're going to disarm, not just America, but the world to spread this thing. So I don't know the exact date, but the infrastructure is happening now.
All right, Mr. Leal, I got to say this: we've got about 2 minutes left of the program. The program went extremely quickly. I can't believe it. We would be very humbled if you would come back on, perhaps even on a semi-regular basis to give us updates, because I think your information is so important for people. Hopefully that will be the case, that you will share with us your continued wisdom and knowledge and findings. And I certainly have learned a lot, and I think our listeners have as well. Folks, burn this to CD.
Put it on YouTube.
Yeah, share this with others, and by all means, visit and ultimately bookmark watchmanscry.com. Watchmanscry.com. Nathan Leal, we want to thank you so much for being so generous with your time and speaking with us tonight.
And hopefully you can come back on soon, because we have a lot more questions.
We just scratched the surface, and Nathan's website has really a lot of information. You can grab a cup of coffee, grab a pot of coffee, and spend a day or two there. It's just amazing. Watch all of the videos. Mr. Leal, again, we want to thank you so much for being a part of our program.
Thank you so much for having me, gentlemen. I'll be glad to come back.
God bless you, sir, and thank you so very much. Tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, new time or a different time, 9 o'clock, we're going to have a special guest, Steve Quayle, and his financial insider, Steve Quayle and his Financial Insider.
The show that was rescheduled from last Sunday that was supposed to go is coming on tomorrow.
Exactly. And we will not be taking phone calls. It's going to be just a fantastic show. But with thanks to, and humble thanks to Mr. Nathan Liel, watcherscry.com. Folks, God bless everyone. Thank you so much for spending your time with us tonight.
Have a good night, everyone.